Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3781, The Irregular Sword. Whatever the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was theorizing was mere speculation. However, the conclusions they were drawing from the limited clues they had found seemed reasonable enough. What have we got to lose? We have to take a risk and try, right? Zen smiled. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord nodded. He agreed with Zen. We have no other choice. Their adventure had begun the moment they had stepped foot in the Jade Pure Realm. They had no way back and the only way out was through. Now, they simply had to take this final step. Let us see just how angry the human spirit king will be, Zen remarked, walking up to the door and pushing it open. The stooped old man suddenly raised his head. There was a hint of hope gleaming in his eyes. Zen wasn't aware of one very important thing. The old man was not yet awake and was still trapped in the treacherous being's consciousness sea. However, he could still feel, hear, and react to the outside world. In fact, he had almost screamed out what he had just said. The old man also hoped to wake up. He cleaned up the bodies of human spirits only because they were the members of his sect. This was just a secondary task. His greatest obsession, however, was the human spirit king, Kincaid. If Kincaid could wake up, so could he. As soon as Zen pushed the door open, an invisible hand grabbed him and dragged him inside. Although this force was powerful, it was still possible for Zen to quite easily resist it. However, he allowed himself to be dragged in. To his immense surprise, the other side of the door was not an ice palace. It was an open stone house. But that wasn't the most surprising part. Every single stone in this house is a holy stone. Zen gasped. As soon as he had come in, he had felt the aura of the holy stones. That's not everything. These are the highest quality of holy stones. I now understand why the Snake Spirit King died here, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord also piped in. Fighting in such an environment would be highly disadvantageous for the Snake Spirit King. What is that? Zen was looking straight ahead. Right in the center of the stone house, a burly man was floating midair. He was wearing a heavy black armor, and his entire body, including his face, was covered by it. They couldn't guess what material the armor was made of, and it emitted a highly strong deterrent force. Even approaching the man would take effort. The most eye-catching thing about him was the heavy sword that was beside him. It was 10 feet long and was almost as tall as the man himself. There was a faint red light flashing on the irregularly shaped blade. Was this the human spirit king, Kincaid? Zen carefully observed the black armor from the distance. Before he could say something, a solemn voice came from the black armor. Who are you? When Zen heard the black armor speak, his heart was filled with joy. The fact that the man had first questioned him was a good sign. He was afraid that the man would directly attack him without communicating with him. Since the human spirit king was rather famous and powerful, he was unwilling to fight against him if he could avoid it. The voice did not seem mechanical, indicating that the man was still rational and could think for himself. This was easily the best that could be made of this situation. Zen took 2 steps forward, cupped his hands and said, I'm Zen, a human being from the chaos. Human beings and human spirits were almost the same in appearance. In fact, in the third grade world, human beings could easily be called extensions of the human spirits. According to the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's conjecture, the human spirit king most likely wouldn't attack Zen. However, conjectures could turn out to be false. You're not the one I'm waiting for. Go to hell. Whoosh. With that angry snap, the irregular heavy sword flew up in the air, and then suddenly rushed forward, breaking through space and slashing at Zen's head. What? Zen's heart was filled with depression at this. A moment ago, he had been feeling rather lucky and pleased, but now, the man was attacking him. He was shocked and caught off guard. Reflexively, he leaned back, and the sword almost grazed his nose as it shot past him. Boom, 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 boom. The wall behind Zen exploded and a series of dark red shock waves could be seen emanating from where the sword had hit. The destruction quadrant, the 13th ability, the 19th, the 26th, the 30th. The ancestry-level bloodline quickly analyzed the power of the heavy sword when it saw those explosions. Although what they were seeing was perhaps not as domineering as the power of the monkey spirit king, it seemed to be more formidable somehow. As soon as the ancestry-level bloodline had analyzed the power of this sword strike, the heavy sword disappeared in an instant. When it appeared once again, it was no longer a single sword, but 7. These 7 heavy swords seemed unreal. They were constantly flashing with some sort of light, and even looking at them could give people a headache. The space-time quadrant, the first ability, the third, the 33rd. Zen's mind quickly analyzed the abilities hidden in the heavy swords. It came naturally to him now. It's just one sword, but it is using an ingenious space theurgy that is not commonly visible. The blood power doesn't seem to be coming from the human spirit king, but from the heavy sword itself. Is it possible for the sword to also inherit the power of the ancestry-level bloodline? While Zen was analyzing the 7 heavy swords, his figure flashed slightly, like a willow leaf floating out. His movement technique also contained a mysterious space theurgy that he had received from the ancestry-level bloodline. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Every single one of the 7 swords failed to hit Zen. The next moment, he had appeared in front of the black armor. "Sir, I don't mean to offend you. I just want to know." Before Zen could finish his sentence, the armor had stretched out a huge black hand to grab Zen's neck. At the same time, it spread out its other hand, and one of the huge swords appeared there all of a sudden. The hand then slashed horizontally, trying to cut Zen into pieces. Zen managed to slip away just in the nick of time. He avoided the sword attack, and this time, trace of annoyance appeared in his eyes. "It looks like you want to determine the outcome of this fight before you are willing to talk. Very well, let's do that." The scene that followed was remarkable. Zen's body was constantly flashing all over the stone house as he moved around everywhere. The irregular heavy sword followed closely behind him like a maggot attached to its bone. The stone hall was filled with the shadows of Zen and the irregular heavy sword. The sword seemed to be moving at an astonishing pace, but Zen was faster. With the help of the ancestry-level bloodline, he could control all the abilities of the entire space-time quadrant. This allowed him to even find out the possible future location of the sword and throw a punch in the right direction. Boom! The shadows of the sword could be seen swinging wildly in a circle as the punch landed right on target. The ancestry-level bloodline not only possessed unparalleled abilities, but also strengthened Zen's body a few times once it had bonded with him. Now, Zen's body was totally different from what it had been some time ago. He was much more powerful, and a single punch was powerful enough to shake the fabric of space. After the punch had landed, Zen's figure flashed once again. He arrived at a new position, and threw another punch in the air. Boom! The sword blade was hit again. In terms of mastery over space and speed, Zen had the upper hand. Dong, dong, dong. The heavy sword received several blows again and again, as Zen landed several punches on it within a span of a few seconds. Once the sword was hit by dozens of punches, a crack finally appeared on its surface. Break it! Now it was Zen who was chasing after the heavy sword and attacking it rapidly. However, at that moment, a bright flash of a green light burst out from the crack, and the strong life energy that was emanating from within quickly repaired the crack. The life quadrant, the 36th ability, the 40th. The ancestry-level bloodline once again analyzed the abilities which were being used to repair the sword. This sword is so remarkable. Where did it come from? Zen was a little surprised now. A sword that actually had the abilities of several quadrants at the same time and could even repair itself when required. It's the life iron. It comes from the deep space. You can think of it as a living being, as much as the man in front of you. The voice of the ancestry-level bloodline came from Zen's inner world. Although it had forgotten a lot of important things, some of its memories from the deep space were still well preserved. Chapter 3782, The Guardians. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of his fist smashing on the heavy irregular sword echoed around the stone hall. Zen couldn't remember how many punches he had thrown by now. Every time the sword broke, it would just quickly repair itself. Zen felt exhausted. Fortunately, the ancestry-level bloodline was also repairing his body. A few green lightning bolts flashed across the blood-colored sky in his inner world and poured into his body, dispelling the fatigue. Can't we just get this over with? Zen was getting impatient. Can't you just analyze the structure of the life iron so I can attack its weakness? After all, Zen was able to counterattack more efficiently when he knew his opponent's energy structures. Those calibrated counterattacks had always proven effective, allowing him to beat the likes of Othniel, Claire and the Grand Master of Heaven. Shouldn't he be using the same tactic on the life iron now? The life iron has a weakness, but it's from the stellar world, and my power can't handle it so well after it was downgraded, the ancestry-level bloodline admitted. The omnipotent ancestry-level bloodline had finally met its match. So we have no choice but to exhaust its energy? Zen asked. That's right. Infinite power against a limited one. It will definitely be defeated that way, the ancestry-level bloodline said. All right then. Zen steeled himself, then continued throwing out stronger punches, expending more power and moving faster. As this went on, a pair of starry eyes observed Zen from inside the black armor. The human spirit king Kincaid was still in an unconscious state, but like the old man outside, he also had a vague sense of the outside world. Kincaid was a leader of the Four-Spirit sect. He was not as smart as Cornelius, nor as fast as Sheehan, nor as strong as Orlando. But his power was the most balanced. He had all the characteristics of the other three kings. He had ended up in the chaos after a miscalculation when the Snake Spirit King had come to kill him, but he held on to his broken body and set a death trap in this place before his life force ran out. The Snake Spirit King had tried repeatedly, but failed every time. Kincaid calculated that the Snake Spirit King would not be able to break the trap unless he resorted to using the power behind him. But if he did that, he would never get what he wanted. After the Snake Spirit King, no one else had tried to break into this place again for a long time. The long years had been torture for Kincaid. Why hasn't anyone come yet? Has Cornelius completely sealed this place? Did something happen to them? Although Kincaid knew that the possibility of someone getting through was slim, he still held on to hope someone would be able to do it. Finally, today, a human had broken in. Humans were just creatures brought into existence by the world builders. Although they were very similar to human spirits, there was still a huge gap between them. That was to say, if human spirits were paintings done by a master, human race was mere scribbles done by a child. If this human named Zen could not match Kincaid's will, he would definitely just end up dead. However, Kincaid had been shocked to see Zen's progress so far. How could there be such a powerful warrior in the chaos? His speed, strength and even understanding and use of space were beyond those of the life sword. How could it be possible? The methods that Zen was displaying now surprised Kincaid even more. Zen was countering the life sword, planning to exhaust the power of the sword bit by bit. He could do it. The ridiculous idea rose in Kincaid's mind. This gave him hope. Perhaps this human could change everything. But the chances were too small. Back then, Kincaid had combined the intelligence of the entire human spirit sect to set the trap here. Only after he was awakened could it be undone. It was not that he looked down on Zen, but it was nearly impossible to defeat him here. The life sword was only the first challenge. Once the life sword was defeated, it would turn into the death sword. There was no way Zen could survive. Alas, I shouldn't have set such a complicated trap at that time. Kincaid thought, irritated with himself. But he also knew that if he hadn't done that, the Snake Spirit King would have already taken him down. It was quite the dilemma. Meanwhile, the primeval Lord of Heaven, the real Fuxi, the real Snake Goddess, Eastern Emperor Tai, Gonggong, Zhurong and the Wing King were all gathered atop the altar, careful not to reveal their presence. An air of doom and gloom hung around them. The Snake Masters and snake-shaped treacherous beings had them surrounded. Just as Zen warned, the Snake Spirit King had discovered their location and ordered the members of the Snake Spirit sect to rush here. "Do you think they can see us?" asked Fuxi cautiously. "I don't think so," the primeval Lord of Heaven replied as he shook his head. "Even the Snake Spirit King can't see through the space deception method with the limited omnipotent stone." "Then we should show ourselves," Eastern Emperor Tai suggested. After all, they were here to prevent the treacherous beings from entering the altar, not to avoid them. "Right, if we're to die here, let's go out with a fight," Zhurong said, all riled up. The human heroes hadn't had the chance to fight yet after they cultivated the blood-controlling method. Zhurong had already considered himself much more lucky than those who had been killed by the space-devouring technique before. But the primeval Lord of Heaven laid a hand on his shoulder before he could move. "What is it? Are you afraid to die?" Zhurong sniped, glaring at the primeval Lord of Heaven. The primeval Lord of Heaven shook his head slightly. "Don't act recklessly. Wait for the right moment." Time passed slowly. More and more treacherous beings arrived at the mountain. Some of the Snake Masters were itching to raid the altar, but they didn't dare to make a move before the Snake Spirit King gave the order. Finally, a huge figure emerged from the side of the mountain. The human heroes couldn't help but feel unnerved at the sight of the Snake Spirit King, even if they had been preparing to face him. "Here he is. Now's the time to show ourselves," the primeval Lord of Heaven said. They then neutralized the space deception method and made themselves visible to the treacherous beings. But the Snake Spirit King just continued to slither slowly to the altar with no reaction, as if their sudden appearance didn't matter at all to him. Sewell, who was beside him, sneered at the heroes. "What are you doing? Are you guarding the altar? How funny." The primeval Lord of Heaven spoke calmly, "We are not alone." Then he waved his hand gently. Many coordinates were thrown out. The human spirits of the Black House, the Joy House and the Broad House came back to life, one after another. Sewell spotted Alphonse, Hamilton and the others and began to laugh. "It hadn't been easy for you to escape, but you returned to die. Fools." Chapter 3783, Pinned Down. The snake spirits were surprised when they found the human spirits escaped, but they weren't too concerned. In fact, even if they were busy fighting the bird spirit sect, the snake spirit sect could easily take these human spirits back by dispatching some snake spirits in their direction. It didn't take long before the limited omnipotent stone mapped out the escape route of the human spirits. Even though the human spirits of the Black House, the Joy House and the Broad House had appeared again, the members of the snake spirit sect barely gave a damn. They knew that the human spirits could not change anything. "Leave these human spirits to me," Balfour hissed as he emerged from the Snake Spirit King's other side. Balfour had been harboring some bitterness at the fact that Johnny had cheated him. At the time, if Sewell hadn't stopped him, he would have taken his people to find and exterminate these human spirits once and for all. "Go ahead," Sewell agreed readily. From the distance, the primeval Lord of Heaven stared down the approaching Snake Spirit King, determination surging within him. He suddenly raised his head to look upward. Large birds filled the skies. They were the bird masters of the bird spirit sect. Sewell looked behind him. "The bird spirit sect is also here," he reported. "They are useless." The Snake Spirit King, who had been silently moving forward, finally spoke. He had already known that the bird spirit sect and the monkey spirit sect had joined forces. Additionally, he was also aware that the bird spirit king was not going to participate in this battle. Even if the bird spirit king did come, the snake spirit king was not afraid. Since the bird spirit king hadn't woken up yet, he could only fight by instinct. Moreover, his strength paled in comparison to the snake spirit king's, which had been proven quite recently. Without hesitation, the snake spirit king continued to approach the primeval Lord of Heaven. The primeval Lord of Heaven shook his other hand, throwing out more and more coordinates. Buzz. Those coordinates flashed with a burst of golden light, and the monkey spirits emerged from them, one by one. Out came Tirog, Hagar, Nerus, Manuel. With every appearance of a monkey spirit, the snake master's expressions darkened. When the monkey spirit king finally came out, the snake master's faces turned stormy, and even the snake spirit king stopped in his tracks. The thought that the monkey master's coordinates were in the hands of these humans had crossed the snake spirit king's mind once, but he figured the monkey masters wouldn't have taken such a great risk. After all, this was equivalent to giving their lives to low-level creatures. Why would they make such a stupid decision? But then again, the monkey spirit king was not known for being smart, tactical or patient. He was known for being audacious. Ha ha ha, the resurrected monkey spirit king, who was sitting on the side of the altar, burst into hearty laughter. He roared with all his strength, and his laughter boomed across the land like tidal waves. The snake-shaped treacherous beings in the distance stumbled backward, totally blown away by the sound waves. Even the 3 mountains around the altar cracked under the impact of the monkey spirit king's roar. "I finally caught you, Cornelius," the monkey spirit king shouted through gritted teeth. The monkey spirit king was valiant and the best in battle in the 4 spirits sect. He had always led the monkeys to rush in front, while the snake spirit king liked to play dirty tricks in the background. He never understood why the snake spirit king operated this way. But at this point, he didn't care about getting answers. He only knew that the snake spirit king was the enemy, the one who had ruined everything. Now, it was time to take revenge. Cornelius replied calmly, "Do you think you can defeat me? Why can't I?" The monkey spirit king clenched his fist tightly. Cornelius shook his head almost pitifully. "If Kincaid was here, you might have a fighting chance. But now, you fight alone." The monkey spirit king was indeed stronger than Cornelius, but it was not difficult to overpower the monkey spirit king if he was alone. Therefore, Cornelius had deceived him into entering the chaos. "Let's see, shall we?" As soon as the monkey spirit king finished his words, the necklace of teeth dangling at his chest began to glow. In the past, he only had 13 wolf teeth, but Zen had helped him repair the remaining 9. This greatly increased his strength. Planting his foot on the altar, he launched himself towards the snake spirit king at full speed. Buzz. One of the wolf teeth flashed brilliantly. It all happened so quickly. The crowd was only able to observe the monkey spirit king taking one step forward, then countless shadows appeared in a straight line behind him. The next thing they knew, his huge hand had clamped around Cornelius's neck. The monkey spirit king roared excitedly. Swish, swish. Yanking Cornelius's long body into the air, the monkey spirit king turned and somersaulted into one of the mountains. The mountain collapsed immediately. At the same time, the snake spirit king's body, which had been smashed against the mountain, also broke into countless triangular fragments, like a silver-glazed rain shower. In the next moment, Cornelius was found coiling around another mountain. The golden light in his eyes flickered dangerously. Orlando had become much cleverer in battle. Now, he didn't merely rely on brute force. So Cornelius had to be careful. Just then, a human appeared at the foot of the mountain, where the tail of the snake spirit king extended. It was Eastern Emperor Tai. The snake masters, bird masters, and human spirits were all very astonished when they saw his small figure suddenly appear. How could a lowly human intervene in a battle between the two kings? He had definitely overestimated himself. Was he here to court death? When the snake spirit king, who had been focusing on the monkey spirit king, saw Eastern Emperor Tai, he was momentarily distracted. Had this human gone mad? While the snake spirit king was lost in thought, Eastern Emperor Tai took the opportunity to stab a golden sword into his tail. Crack! This golden sword was too long to humans, but to the snake spirit king, it was but a small golden needle. However, to his surprise, the golden needle had an unimaginable power. It pierced right through his tail, although the actual damage it inflicted was negligible. You can think that we're insignificant, but we're not stupid. We're as smart as human spirits. Before Eastern Emperor Tai could even finish his words, the snake spirit king flicked his tail towards him. Even though it was supposedly pinned down, it moved so fast that Eastern Emperor Tai just saw a blur. With a muffled sound, his body instantly turned into a blood mist upon impact. Eastern Emperor Tai might have been dead now, but his golden sword didn't disappear. However, the snake spirit king had no time to deal with this needle, as the monkey spirit king had suddenly appeared in front of him. Move, the snake spirit king said. Just as he was about to move away like what he had done just now, he suddenly felt something was wrong with his body. It felt like he was being grabbed by something. He shot a quick glance backward to investigate. What he found stunned him. That small golden sword had pinned his tail down. Boom, boom, boom. Just then, Orlando landed some heavy punches on the snake spirit king's head. With each punch, the mountain that the snake spirit king had coiled around collapsed a little. After 3 or 4 punches, the mountain had been razed to the ground, and a greater part of the snake spirit king's body sank in the ground. At this point, the snake spirit king was still trying desperately to find a way to avoid Orlando's attacks. However, the golden sword was displaying an extremely strange power, firmly nailing him to the spot. Eastern Emperor Tai might have sacrificed his life, but the golden sword he used in his final moments seemed to mock the snake spirit king. Chapter 3784, Around. As soon as Zen entered the altar, the primeval Lord of Heaven and the others also came up with their own plan. There had to be a way for them to contribute to this battle. The primeval Lord of Heaven and his companions were weaker than the bird spirits, the monkey spirits, and the human spirits. It would be hard for them to last long in a fight like this. Unlike the treacherous beings, they didn't have tough bodies and they couldn't come back to life through coordinates. They were severely disadvantaged. Even the blood power they inherited was not enough for them to confront powerful beings like the Snake Spirit King. It seemed as though the only thing they could do there was to throw the coordinates. However, the human heroes wouldn't give up that easily. They began to discuss with each other. With the right combination of techniques, maybe they would have something to offer. Their weakness was actually their biggest advantage. They were so weak that the bird spirits, the monkey spirits, and the human spirits wouldn't pay any attention to them. As far as I know, the monkey spirit king is impulsive and vengeful. Therefore, I think he will be the first one to make a move, the snake goddess surmised. What does it matter? The monkey spirit king and the snake spirit king both are too strong. It will be impossible for us to interfere in their battle, Zhirong said skeptically. Gong Gong added, yes, I agree with you. If we interfere, we will only get ourselves killed. How about we attack the snake spirit king directly? The primeval Lord of Heaven suddenly suggested. Have you completely lost your mind? How are we even going to do that? Even the hot-tempered Zhirong showed a frightened look on his face. At the very least, we have to come up with a more practical plan, he added. We are no match for the Snake Spirit King even if we work together, Zhurong thought to himself. He didn't want to admit it out loud because his companions would just feel hopeless. However, Fuxi revealed a mischievous grin. Do you think we can eliminate him by merely using reasonable methods? He asked playfully. Zhurong was taken aback and didn't know how to reply. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we're going to deal with the Snake Spirit King on our own. I mean we can team up with the Monkey Spirit King and attack the Snake Spirit King together, the primeval Lord of Heaven emphasized. As a matter of fact, the Monkey Spirit King was stronger than the Snake Spirit King in terms of brute strength. However, the Snake Spirit King was cunning and had holy items at his disposal. Thus, it was possible that the Monkey Spirit King wouldn't be able to touch him even after 100 rounds. Eastern Emperor Tai had remained silent the whole time. But at this point, he opened his mouth to make a suggestion. I can immobilize anything with my sword, he chimed in. Are you sure it will work on the Snake Spirit King? If so, then it probably will come in handy, the Snake Goddess said. In theory, it will work as long as my sword doesn't break, Eastern Emperor Tai replied confidently. After Eastern Emperor Tai mastered the blood-controlling method, his sword skills had become more mysterious and effective. His sword seemed to follow a certain rule. This enabled it to become unbreakable. However, he had never used it in a battle before. It was because he couldn't defeat the enemy with this move. Not long ago, he had communicated with the Eastern Emperor Tai that was in the chaos. Unfortunately, they failed to figure out the correct method on how to unleash the full potential of the sword technique. In any case, the Snake Spirit King is a treacherous being. He will just cut his tail off so he can escape, Fuxi said while shaking his head. The Snake Spirit King was a slippery and crafty opponent. A mocking smile appeared on the Snake Goddess's face. Do you really think arrogant beings like him would sacrifice his tail to keep himself safe? She asked wryly. In the eyes of the Snake Spirit King, humans were merely inferior beings. It would be too shameful for him to break his tail just to get away with them. Well, no one knows what'll happen when the Monkey Spirit King fights the Snake Spirit King. So, how will Eastern Emperor Tai trap the Snake Spirit King? How will you even go there? Gong Gong was genuinely curious. If there was even a slightest possibility of defeating the Snake Spirit King, he was willing to cooperate. I'll send him there, the Wing King volunteered all of a sudden. Thanks to his bloodline, the Wing King had the ability of the space-time quadrant. Even though his prowess in this ability was greatly enhanced, he didn't have the chance to use it until now. He thought that this space theurgy he learned was not even worth mentioning compared to the Snake Spirit King's space guiding stone. Nevertheless, he could utilize it to send Eastern Emperor Tai to the battlefield. He would do it once the Snake Spirit King and the Monkey Spirit King started battling. After their lively discussion, they ironed out their plan to defeat the Snake Spirit King. Seeing how it might succeed, everybody was on board with it. During the second round of the Monkey Spirit King and the Snake Spirit King's battle, the Wing King sent Eastern Emperor Tai to the battlefield where the two kings were. As soon as he arrived there, Eastern Emperor Tai used his sword to stab the Snake Spirit King. This attack rendered the Snake Spirit King immobile. Everything went just as the Snake Goddess had predicted. Their plan was going smoothly. Even though Eastern Emperor Tai just appeared out of thin air, the Snake Spirit King didn't pay much attention to him. He didn't dodge the attack and now he was struggling to break free from the sword. However, the simple golden sword made him unable to move. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't even lift the tip of his tail. He was now facing a barrage of attacks from the Monkey Spirit King. But the Snake Spirit King didn't even think about cutting his tail off to get rid of the sword. His mind was clouded with doubt. What in heaven's name is going on with this sword? What is this? Why couldn't I break free from it? He thought out loud. You should have seen this coming, Cornelius. Take this. The Monkey Spirit King roared as he charged towards his immobile adversary. As soon as he finished speaking, a handful of holy stones materialized in his palm. He didn't waste any time. He swiftly embedded the holy stones into the Snake Spirit King's body. Boom! A loud explosion was heard all throughout the battlefield. The light of annihilation exploded and caused severe injuries in the Snake Spirit King's body. The Monkey Spirit King also hurt himself with the holy stones because he didn't use anything to protect him. Nonetheless, the damage the holy stones did to the Snake Spirit King was greater than what they did to him. And that was all that mattered. Annihilation Fist. The Monkey Spirit King was just getting started. This was the perfect opportunity for him to defeat the Snake Spirit King. Soon after, a wolf tooth from his necklace glowed with black light. 7 bloodline powers merged into one and formed a light ball. Afterward, it shot directly at the Snake Spirit King. The Monkey Spirit King prepared for his next attack. Extreme intent of thunder. This time, another wolf tooth emitted a scarlet lightning that surrounded the Monkey Spirit King's fist. He punched the Snake Spirit King's chest and the powerful lightning hit the latter. Power of broken stars. He bellowed once again and launched a different attack. Most of the power contained in the Monkey Spirit King's necklace of wolf teeth came from the destruction quadrant. That in itself was extremely lethal. As the light of annihilation shone brightly, the bloodline powers simultaneously surged towards the Snake Spirit King. The bird masters remained hovering in the sky. They watched in horror as the Monkey Spirit King hit the Snake Spirit King. Originally, they were here to provide assistance to the Monkey Spirit King. However, it looked like that the Monkey Spirit King could finish off the Snake Spirit King all by himself. They didn't dare get in the middle of that onslaught of attacks. None of the bird masters saw this coming. In just a fraction of a moment, the Monkey Spirit King gained the upper hand. Alphonse, Hamilton, and the other human spirits were also dumbfounded by what they just witnessed. Despite that, Alphonse was clever. He knew that the reason why the Snake Spirit King was suddenly at a serious disadvantage was because of the golden sword. It had trapped him and made him immobile. Clearly, I underestimated these humans. Not only did they take advantage of their bloodline powers, but they also saw through Snake Spirit King's mind, Alphonse murmured as he glanced at the primeval Lord of Heaven, the Snake Goddess, and other humans who were watching not far away from the battlefield. Sewell and Balfour were more stunned than anyone else. They stood there rooted to the ground. Their faces showed utter confusion at what just happened. Boom, 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 they heard more explosions going off one after another. The Snake Spirit King's body was in complete shambles. At this point, it would be impossible for him to escape. He couldn't even block the Monkey Spirit King's powerful attacks. As the light of annihilation eroded the heavily injured Snake Spirit King, his body broke into pieces and slowly began to dissipate. Everyone who was watching felt like the battle between the two kings had lasted for a long time. But in fact, only a minute had passed. When two top-level masters engaged in a fight, the one who made a simple mistake would lose in an instant. The Monkey Spirit King stopped attacking as the crumbling remains of the Snake Spirit King under his feet vanished into thin air. All the Snake Masters who had been eager to fight immediately fell silent. The Snake Spirit King that they pledged their loyalty to was killed in such a short period of time. Because of that, they didn't see any point in continuing the battle. The Monkey Spirit King stomped on the ground with one foot, and the ground caved in and formed a big crater. His eyes blazed as he was still full of fighting spirit. This is boring. Cornelius was still so weak. Is there anyone else who can be my match? The Monkey Spirit King demanded. Chapter 3785, The Death Sword. Long live King Orlando. Long live King Orlando. Long live King Orlando. Witnessing their king achieve an undisputed victory, the Monkey Masters jumped and cheered as they were consumed with pride gushing from every fiber of their beings. Overwhelmed with their sense of achievement, Manuel, Tirog, and Hagar beat on their chests as hard as they could in unison, making rhythmic sounds like drums. The Snake Goddess glanced in the direction of the overly excited Monkey Masters and shook her head in disappointment. Even though they were frighteningly powerful, the Monkey Masters were almost mindless. What was there to be so enthusiastic about? How could they celebrate like this? It could not be counted as a victory unless they were successful in removing the Snake Spirit King's coordinates. A while ago, before Eastern Emperor Tai decided to sacrifice his life, he asked, let's suppose our surprise attack worked, and we managed to kill the Snake Spirit King with the Monkey Spirit King's power. What's next for us? What would be our next step? We'll just have to keep fighting. I'm certain, he will revive again at his coordinates, the Snake Goddess replied with confidence. If that's how it is, won't my sacrifice be in vain? Eastern Emperor Tai asked as he furrowed his brows. At his innocent question, the Snake Goddess let out a light chuckle before glancing back at him. If we're all destined to die anyway, your sacrifice would be inevitable. You're only embracing your death earlier than the rest of us so you could buy Zen some more time. Agreeing to her statement, the primeval Lord of Heaven gave a slight nod and spoke, once the Snake Spirit King dies, the remaining Snake Masters and treacherous beings will be utterly panicked. Once that happens, we will try to kill as many of them as we can. Then, both them and the Snake Spirit King will take a while to gather together again after they are revived. In this way, we'll be able to buy enough time for Zen. Eastern Emperor Tai listened to their conclusions with his utmost attention. He remained quiet as he stared into the space ahead. His demeanor remained calm, and he showed no signs of backing down at that point. With unwavering resolve, he was prepared to sacrifice his existence to help them achieve their ultimate victory. After recalling how they had planned before Eastern Emperor Tai died, the snake goddess turned to address the others. Everyone, it won't be long before the reanimation of the Snake Spirit King occurs. Before that happens, we must defeat the Snake Masters all. Her tone was brimming with determination as she roused them all up for the challenge that awaited them. In response to her words, Alphonse, Hamilton, and other human spirits nodded and raised their fists in the air before they screamed, "Yeah! We can't just let a rare opportunity like this slip by. Let's kill them all." Whoosh, 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 whoosh. After having their spirits lifted, the human spirits charged forward towards their enemies from the altar. The monkey masters, who were too busy beating their chests and celebrating, suddenly stopped in their tracks as they paused to watch the human spirits rush towards their enemies. Witnessing their tenacity, they felt their fighting spirit reignite and take control of their bodies as they followed after them to offer their assistance in their conquest. At this scene, Lawler, Duran, Orville and other bird masters hovering in the air let out shrieks of delight as they aimed themselves towards the snake masters and shot down like sharp arrows, piercing away at their enemies' flesh. The sudden death of the Snake Spirit King left Sewell stunned for a significant amount of time. When he regained his senses, he realized they were fighting a war that would result in a terrible loss for them since they were rendered vulnerable without their king. Hiss. Thinking quick, he began to let out a series of sounds that were unique to the snake spirits to discreetly instruct them on what they should do. "All of you, retreat." The sturdy body of the Snake Spirit King had been obliterated, and it wouldn't be wise of them to keep fighting a battle they would eventually lose. Even though at this moment, all odds were stacked up against them, it didn't matter. All they had to do was hold them off and buy enough time for their king to be revived to snatch their lost advantage in the war. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Each of them began to wriggle away from their enemies in an attempt to escape and split in all directions, all the while maintaining their incredible speed. Although their movements were significantly agile, the human spirits and the monkey spirits were by no means slow, and the bird masters were especially quicker than all of them. Lawler, Duran, and all the others had harbored strong feelings of hatred towards the snake spirit sect. Now, when finally met with an opportunity to channel their resentment in the worst way possible, they were not going to hold back. Buzz, splash, boom. As the battle raged on, bolts of lightning and pillars of light contributed to the hues of the space around them as they clashed against each other, along with a vivid contrast of the bloody mist erupting from the bodies of the dead and the wounded. The mountains that surrounded the altar collapsed helplessly, unable to withstand the overwhelming energy colliding and tampering with the atmosphere. The earth cracked wide open after having endured several jolts of exploding pressure. The energy waves that were produced from both sides created wild surges of energy like those of seawater. Rays of light of annihilation swept across the ground, disposing of the treacherous beings in their path like insignificant obstructions. Although Sewell ordered the snake spirits to retreat ahead of time, they failed to follow through with his instructions unscathed. Under the relentless efforts of their enemies to chase them down to their deaths, about 70% of the snake spirits were wiped out. No matter how powerful or experienced Sewell was, he was unable to escape from the clutches of the Monkey Spirit King. Just as he attempted to flee into the earth, the mighty Monkey Spirit King raised his feet and stomped hard on the ground, cracking it wide open from the sheer force, leaving Sewell nowhere to go. Ambushed and surrounded from all sides, Sewell was pulled out mercilessly. As the Monkey Spirit King glared at Sewell, he remembered what this cunning snake master had done to him in the Night View Island. After several painful, but unsuccessful attempts to wriggle his way out, Sewell was forcefully kneaded into a ball by the Monkey Spirit King along with several holy stones. As the holy stones lit up and erupted with light of annihilation, Sewell's body was reduced to ashes as he burned to death under the overwhelming heat. Meanwhile, inside the stone hall, the battle between Zen and the irregular heavy sword continued on. He had smashed the irregular heavy sword so many times that he lost count. As he continued his relentless attacks, he began to notice that the irregular heavy sword was taking longer intervals to recover compared to before. When Zen smashed it once more, the green light that shone through the sword started to weaken as it got dimmer. Simultaneously, it took even longer to regenerate itself back to its complete form. Crack. This time, while the irregular heavy sword was in the middle of repairing itself, it was struck by Zen's fist again. Before the crack could completely recover itself, it began to expand further as it spread across the sword. Taking advantage of its vulnerability from having endured several blows, Zen threw in countless punches at the damaged sword. As a result, many cracks extended from the hilt of the sword before it finally gave in and broke into dozens of pieces. Click, click, click. As the irregular pieces fell to the ground, they scattered in all directions. "I finally finished it," Zen let out a sigh of relief before he turned to walk straight towards the black armor after sensing he had wasted too much time on this one single sword. As soon as he took 2 steps forward towards his destination, the irregular pieces of the sword on the ground began to tremble as they rose up to the air and floated in the space above him. Zen watched as the broken pieces gathered in one place and pieced themselves together to reshape the sword. Damn it, when will this end? Zen balled his hands into fists as he tightened his jaw, his eyes reflected unparalleled rage coupled with a hint of impatience. With a flash, he returned to the irregular heavy sword and threw a punch, channeling his inner frustration out. However, before this punch hit the blade, the irregular heavy sword suddenly became ethereal. Zen's fist penetrated through its shadow, while the irregular heavy sword returned to the black armor's hand. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Traces of thick black fog began to emanate from the sword. As the fog began to spread across the entire stone hall, it consumed all the light and continued to expand its inky influence as everything fell into darkness. Meanwhile, inside the black armor, Kincaid remained in a state of shock. This mere human had actually managed to defeat him. He couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the main world after witnessing such a spectacle. How could a creature as powerful as him appear in the chaos? At that point, he was a product of many conflicting emotions welling up inside of him. On one hand, he was left speechless by Zen's actions and potential, but on the other hand, he sympathized with him. Breaking my life sword will be the worst mistake you've made in your entire life, Kincaid thought to himself. He knew full well about the boundless potential that the death sword possessed. Kincaid had spent a decent amount of time with this heavy sword. During the countless battles he had experienced, Kincaid had only wielded the death sword 3 times. The fact that once the death sword was activated, even Kincaid would find it difficult to control it was evident enough to vouch for its strength. Both he and the sword would find themselves in a tough situation where they would be unstoppable and incapable of controlling their impulses. The darkness that shrouded the area lasted for 3 seconds, before several horizontal and vertical streaks of green light bounced off each other and lit up the space. These light streaks refused to meet an end, as they would extend to infinite distances, outlining numerous large cubes in this space. Did the space just change? Are we no longer in the stone hall? Zen couldn't help but blurt out his inner thoughts as he paid attention to his switched surroundings. The space isn't the only thing that's changed. The ancestry-level bloodline's voice resounded in his ears. This sword has changed all the rules. This is another world, a world with new rules. Is that so? A world with different rules? Zen exclaimed in an awestruck voice as though he was hypnotized by what he witnessed. You are correct, Kincaid replied nonchalantly from inside the black armor. Unable to control himself, he clenched the heavy sword securely in his grip and charged towards Zen. Damn, what an incredible speed. Zen's eyes widened subconsciously as he watched Kincaid close in on him. Before he could have a moment to dodge, Zen was struck hard with the heavy sword. Bang! Zen was thrown off into the air as though he were weightless, and his body flew past countless cubes from the impact. If he were still in the stone hall, his trajectory would have been interrupted after getting knocked into a wall at a distance of several hundred feet. But now, he had been falling backward in the space for dozens of miles, unable to stop himself as the path was endless, and there was no obstruction in the way to break his fall. This was a world of infinite length and width. Chapter 3786, Modification and Adaptation. Zen, are you okay? Can you hear me? The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was obviously worried. It didn't matter how powerful Zen's body was. He still couldn't quite compare to the treacherous beings. He must have suffered a great deal after being hit by the irregular heavy sword. Yes, I'm fine, don't worry about me, responded Zen. He winced just as he finished saying this. The problem was not the heavy sword itself, but this world. The rules in this place were completely modified. Nevertheless, he was very familiar with the modification of rules. The universe, the divine land, the source world, and the other shore all had different sets of rules. They were set when these places were just constructed. But with enough strength, it would be possible for someone to alter them. It was the simplest to modify the rules of the inner world. For instance, it was fairly easy for Zen to change the rules in his primitive land. There was no doubt that the movements of the irregular heavy sword were extraordinarily fast. But with his Thurgy, he definitely could have avoided it. Unfortunately, the rules of this boundless world had been changed. Therefore, his Thurgy was totally useless. The space Thurgy he previously demonstrated was rendered ineffective. Swish! All of a sudden, he heard a strange rushing sound. The heavy armor that disappeared in the darkness reappeared unexpectedly. It reached out and made a gentle grabbing motion. At once, the irregular heavy sword returned to its hand. Afterward, there was a buzzing sound coming from where the heavy armor was. Buzz. From a distance, Zen saw peculiar lights shining one after another. The buzzing sound was apparently coming from those strange lights. Upon closer inspection, those lights were actually coming from the runes embedded on the surface of the black armor. They were lighting up consequently. Earlier, the heavy armor seemed lifeless and impassive. After the runes lit up, it suddenly became full of vitality. When Zen confronted the armor a while ago, he merely treated it as a dead thing, although he could clearly sense the unpleasant aura of the treacherous being. He thought that his real opponent here was the irregular heavy sword. Now, it seemed as though the irregular heavy sword had summoned the black armor. Slowly, it was coming to life. Soon enough, two blood-red dots lit up within the armor's helmet. It gave the black armor a more menacing aura. What in the world? There was an unusually grave expression upon Zen's handsome face. This time, the black armor felt like a living person to him. Maybe it was even an exceptional top master. It radiated with a strong aura of life and soul. Meanwhile, the aura of the treacherous being still existed within the armor. He could even feel its strength. This meant that Kincaid had not awakened yet. However, Zen could not help it. He just had to ask. "Is that you, Master Kincaid?" He called out to the black armor. Kincaid was trapped within the treacherous being. When he heard Zen's question, he smiled bitterly. Yes and no, he thought silently. I do not wish to kill you. But because I'm trapped in here, I have no choice. Kincaid felt utterly helpless and downhearted. If he could just change his wish willfully, he wouldn't have to face such a shameful and unpleasant situation now. But then again, how could a wish be changed at will? If only he knew how. Swish. Once again, Zen heard a rushing noise. The black armor took a step forward and instantly disappeared from where it was standing. Out of nowhere, the irregular heavy sword slashed towards Zen's head. Actually, its speed was not that fast. However, Zen's speed had decreased a lot in this world. There was no way he could dodge this sword attack. His only option was to withstand it. Crash. The collision between the sword and Zen caused a loud crashing sound. He crossed his arms over his chest in a desperate attempt to block it. The sword effectively landed a hit, and the impact sent him flying again. While Zen was still helplessly soaring in midair, the black armor appeared above him at an incredible speed. Boom. The sword hit him hard on his back. After that, he began to plummet to the ground. Swish. Hearing this, Zen already had an idea of what was about to happen. As he predicted, the black armor disappeared again. This time, it reappeared beneath Zen and pointed the irregular heavy sword upwards in an attempt to stab him once more. Zen instantly thought that if the irregular heavy sword landed this hit, it would probably pierce through his body. This time, I'm sure. I can avoid it, if I could just. During the most crucial moment, the ancestry-level bloodline activated the ability of the space-time quadrant once again. It wouldn't be able to change the basic rules of this space. However, it could immediately adapt to such rules. As soon as the power in Zen's elixir field emerged, he quickly disappeared. Shortly after, he reappeared dozens of miles away from his previous location. After his spatial transference, Zen did not stop. He continued to move further away. He went from 10 to 100 miles away. A few more seconds passed, and he was already 1,000 miles away from the black armor. In just a short span of time, Zen had managed to move thousands of miles away. However, the entirety of this space seemed to have no end. Meanwhile, the black armor appeared as if it wasn't in a hurry to chase after him. It merely hovered in the air and waited patiently. Once Zen was already 10,000 miles away from it, it took one step forward. Despite the vast distance between Zen and the armor, it still appeared precisely beside Zen. Obviously, it was perfectly in control of this entire space. Instinctively, Zen stepped back and tried to keep his distance. However, a strange thing occurred. As Zen retreated, he collided headfirst with the irregular heavy sword. Crash! A loud booming sound echoed throughout the space. The collision between Zen and the sword was so forceful that it left a huge dent on his forehead. The gash was an inch deep. Zen, are you all right? Answer me. Once again, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord asked him anxiously. Well, Before Zen could answer, the black armor had already moved to his left side. Naturally, he moved to the right to avoid it. Oddly enough, he slammed once again onto the irregular heavy sword. It caused a deep gash on his shoulder. Thankfully, Zen's bones were extremely strong and hard. His body was also unbelievably tough. No blood gushed out from the wound. Finally, the ancestry-level bloodline gave him a helpful reminder. The basic rules of this space are reversed. Therefore, the left and right, up and down, and the front and back directions are actually the other way around. I see. So how should I deal with this? Zen asked as he tried to think about his next move. Here, let me adjust your perception. A stream of life energy rose from the primitive land and flowed directly into Zen's mind. While this was happening, Zen's eyes began to flicker. All of a sudden, he felt dizzy. In the blink of an eye, the world was reversed. Now, to the opposite direction. The heavy black armor slashed at him again. This time, Zen's reaction was perfect. He was able to dodge the attack with ease. Inside the treacherous being's body, Kincaid was deep in thought. He started to process what he just witnessed. The death sword was able to make the basic rules. All living beings in this space had to follow the basic rules in order to survive. No one could ever go against the rules. However, Zen was still alive after battling with the sword for such a long time. Where on earth did he come from? How strong was he? This was completely beyond Kincaid's understanding. He couldn't quite figure out why. I see. You can adapt to the rules that have already been changed by the death sword twice now. You really are as talented as I was in the past. But if it continuously changes the basic rules, you are going to be in grave danger, he thought to himself. Everyone's ability was limited and fixed. Perhaps Zen's bloodline power could withstand the twice-revised basic rules purely by luck and coincidence. But if the death sword frequently adjusted the basic rules, in the end, he would still be killed. Kincaid wanted to warn Zen about this. Unfortunately, he couldn't. Just like Kincaid predicted, the irregular heavy sword modified the basic rules once more. Zen's body suddenly became awfully heavy. It seemed like it was made of lead. Moreover, the weight of all the materials in this world increased 10,000 times over. If Zen didn't figure out the right technique, he would suffer another blow like last time. Fortunately, the ancestry-level bloodline had also adapted. Whenever any of the basic rules were changed, it would use a new ability to help Zen adjust. When the rules were altered for the third time, it only took Zen a brief moment to readjust his perception. The black armor didn't quite expect that Zen would manage to adapt in such a short span of time. Nonetheless, it carried on with its assault. But this time, Zen was ready to fight back. Chapter 3787, Guard with all your might. When the black heavy armor came at him again wielding the heavy sword, Zen's initially sluggish body suddenly was able to move nimbly. As he bended down slightly, the irregular heavy sword swept past his shoulder, missing him by an inch. He took this as an opportunity to get close to the black armor. Raising his hand, he cried out, "Destructive power, 3 blows." In the blood-red sky of the primitive land, 9 kinds of power of the destruction quadrant began to merge with each other, turning into 3 kinds of power. The 3 kinds of power gathered in Zen's palm and he slapped the chest plate of the black armor, leaving a clear palm print. Bang, bang, bang. The palm print then exploded 3 times in a row. The noise from the explosions was not too loud, and the power contained in the slaps wasn't formidable. But its destructive power was limited to the palm print on the black armor's chest, meaning all the force was concentrated solely on that one spot alone. Crack, crack, crack. The black armor began to crack. On the third crack, the right side of the armor exploded to reveal the body of treacherous being. The irregular heavy sword obviously hadn't expected that Zen would be able to launch a counterattack so smoothly. The heavy sword changed the rules again, making everything in the space become light, and it simultaneously stabbed at Zen's head with great momentum. However, the moment the heavy sword changed the rules, Zen was able to adapt instantly. Gently twisting his body like a lithe snake, he narrowly avoided the thrust of the sword blade. In one swift motion, Zen reached out and pressed his palm against the blade of the irregular heavy sword. As soon as Zen touched it, his palm print was accurately imprinted on the blade. Bang, bang, bang. Another 3 muffled sounds rang out. The surface of the irregular heavy sword, which had been restored to its original shape previously, began to crack once more. Wait, what? Even though Kincaid was bound inside the treacherous being body, he could still feel the pain of the irregular heavy sword. Even when facing the death sword, not only was Zen able to adapt to its rules quickly, but he was even able to severely damage the sword. He really had a chance at winning. This was the first time such a thought had crossed Kincaid's mind. This time, he no longer felt ridiculous. Instead, he became very excited. He had not yet awakened, and being trapped in the treacherous being body was not something he wanted. In fact, he always wanted to break free from this prison, but this wish had never been granted. Perhaps Zen wouldn't be able to wake him up, but at least he could bring him out of the altar. It's all up to you, extraordinary human being. Kincaid muttered, feeling a glimmer of hope well within him. As a human spirit king, he looked down upon human beings. This kind of contempt was the attitude that the creatures of a high-grade world would have towards a low-grade world, similar to how people were disgusted by insects crawling on the ground. While Zen did attract the attention of Kincaid before, he only viewed him as a human slightly stronger than the others. Now, Kincaid realized that he might have misjudged. After all, he hadn't awakened yet, so he couldn't observe the outside world directly. He could only infer and make a judgment from some hazy sensations. The strength of this human being was probably beyond his imagination. This thought made his heart beat faster as hope surged within him, like water gushing out from a dried-out spring. Just as Kincaid got his hopes up, the basic rules of this world suddenly became extremely complicated. Every 3 seconds the basic rules changed. If an ordinary Eternal Realm warrior was in this space, even if the irregular heavy sword did not attack them, they would still be killed by this rapidly changing basic rules. However, the one facing the irregular heavy sword was Zen, who had the ancestry-level bloodline. No matter how quickly the basic rules were revised, Zen could instantly unleash the blood power to deal with it. The sword's methods and Zen's methods could evenly balance each other out. This battle lasted for a full 5 minutes. At this point, both of them stood glued to their spots, unmoving. It had become a silent battle. In the end, the irregular heavy sword was still unable to get around Zen's rules. It had run out of patience. As the sword emitted rays of green light, this infinite space was filled with the life energy, as though life pulsated everywhere infinitely. The horizontal and vertical rays of green light in the space then turned into balls, and the abundant life energy gathered within these balls. Then, these balls hatched open, birthing countless monsters with 2 feet and 2 pincers. These monsters emitted a powerful aura the second they were born. There was no emotion in their eyes, but they were all fixated on Zen. Awaiting orders, they seemed restless, impatiently wanting to devour Zen. Do you plan on winning by relying on the advantage of numbers? Zen taunted with a smile. He thought for a moment. Many incarnations of himself constantly formed in the primitive land. After these incarnations appeared, they flew straight towards the center of the primitive land. Rushing out of the dome, these incarnations appeared beside Zen. 1, 2, 3. In a matter of seconds, hundreds of his incarnations stood beside Zen, and the number was still increasing with each second that passed. This time, what Zen used was not the power of the ancestry-level bloodline, but the power of the primitive land. Seeing how the number of Zen's clones had soared, the monsters surged forward to attack Zen. Go, Zen ordered. His clones were also endowed with spirituality and began to fight the monsters with pincers. This was no longer a one-on-one battle, but a battle involving countless warriors. Chaos ensued. Boom, whoosh, swish, swish. Neither Zen nor the irregular heavy sword joined in on the fighting. Instead, the two looked at each other from afar while observing the chaotic situation. Meanwhile, outside the altar, when the treacherous beings were done cleaning up all of the snake spirits, they once again gathered above the altar. The monkey spirit king broke the silence first, asking, "What should we do next?" It was not until the monkey masters calmed down from their excitement over defeating their opponents did they realize that the war wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. Let's find out the snake spirit king's coordinates, suggested Manuel. If we destroy his coordinates, then the snake spirit king won't come back to life. Hagar agreed with a nod. The snake goddess glanced at the monkey masters almost disdainfully. These brainless creatures could only talk nonsense, she thought. Since he has the space guiding stone, it'd be difficult to find his coordinates, Lawler said, shaking his head. Then, what are we supposed to do? Manuel asked again, scratching his head. Guard with all your might, the snake goddess suddenly cut in. How long will we guard here? Asked Alphonse. In the prior battle, the ones who had made the greatest contributions were the human beings, especially Eastern Emperor Tai. Thanks to this, the human spirits and the bird spirits now looked up to them and were willing to listen to their opinions. Guard, the primeval Lord of Heaven said in a serious tone, until Zen comes out. Hearing the primeval Lord of Heaven's words, Lawler countered unhappily, time is of the essence. We need to fight against the snake spirit king, not guard by all means. Can Zen really find our king? Alphonse asked worriedly, ignoring Lawler's outburst. Even though the humans had garnered some respect by now, the human spirits and the bird masters were not willing to place their hopes on Zen alone. Seeing that there were different opinions going around, the monkey spirit king touched the necklace of teeth on his chest and grinned. I believe in that guy, and we can guard with all our might, he said. Chapter 3788, Integration. Lawler, Duran, the other bird masters, Alphonse and the other human spirits were all raring to initiate the fight. It was, after all, better than doing nothing. They were bound to face the treacherous beings starting to come alive one after another anyway. But the monkey spirit king had the final say here. The bird masters and the human spirits couldn't disobey his order. An hour had passed when they suddenly spotted a space fluctuation in the distance, rapidly coming nearer and nearer. Before long, it was already floating close to the altar. It was in the shape of a ball, enclosing something shining with a golden light. The primeval Lord of Heaven's eyes widened in sudden recognition. "This is a set of coordinates," he exclaimed. "The coordinates of the Snake Spirit King. The two golden crosses are huge. It must be his." The sizes and coordinates of treacherous beings were directly proportional to each other. This was why the coordinates of the monkey spirits, such as Manuel and Tirog, were far smaller than that of the monkey spirit king. The coordinates in the ball were almost the same size as the snake spirit king, so they were likely his. The monkey spirit king scoffed and strode forward. "I don't know what you're thinking, but you must have a death wish since you're showing your coordinates to us." "No, wait," the snake goddess said, wanting to stop the monkey spirit king. But he was bull-headed and intractable. He turned a deaf ear to the warning. He launched himself into the sky and tried to grab the ball. The ball continued to float in the air undisturbed. The monkey spirit king caught nothing. "Hiding in space, huh?" The monkey spirit king sneered. One of the wolf teeth flashed and began emitting a strong power of space. The monkey spirit king's palm began to glow with the space power, making it look like he was wearing a blue crystal glove. He leapt up and tried to grab the ball again. He still got nothing. The ball was like a pocket of air which could only be seen and couldn't be touched. In the Four Spirit sect, Xian was best at using the space theurgy. But even he wouldn't be able to get the ball. A huge snake head slowly emerged from the golden coordinates in the ball. It was the Snake Spirit King, laughing loudly. "You are as strong as ever, Orlando, but you still have nothing on me." Seething at Cornelius' mockery, Orlando lunged at the ball again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The monkey spirit king kept swiping at the ball, to no avail. His fists, as big as hills and usually powerful enough to destroy the heaven and earth, proved futile now. They couldn't touch the snake spirit king at all. "What's that ball that contains the coordinates? It must be formed by some mysterious space law. The monkey spirit king can't break it. Who knows what it is?" Everyone was stumped. The snake goddess pursed her lips. The snake spirit king must be confident in that ball to dare to bring the coordinates in it. "We don't know what the ball is. Does it make the snake spirit king invincible?" The wing king muttered, thinking aloud. The bird masters and the human spirits trained all their attention on the ball, trying to figure it out. There were many masters who were proficient in the space theurgy among them, but even they were puzzled. Under the violent attacks of the monkey spirit king, the snake spirit king had revived from his coordinates. He darted out while the former was off guard, gripping him with lethal force. Orlando was taken aback by the sudden attack, but soon found his bearings. "You think you can kill me with this? How arrogant." Had Cornelius continued to just hide in the ball, Orlando wouldn't have been able to reach him. But now that he had come out, he could smash him like an egg. The monkey spirit king's arms began to expand. With his strength, he could break Cornelius easily. But just then, silver runes appeared on Cornelius' body. His soft flesh took on a metallic sheen. In a moment, his body had hardened like steel wrapped around the monkey spirit king. The monkey spirit king struggled, but he failed to break free. "I'm never arrogant. That's more your style," the snake spirit king sneered. Swish, 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 silver spikes jutted out of the snake spirit king's body and pierced into the monkey spirit king. Buzz! A huge holy stone suddenly appeared in the ball still floating above the two kings. The holy stone had already been activated. The light of annihilation enveloped the two kings. This was now a fight to the death. "I can come back to life again and again. What about you? Could you also revive?" the snake spirit king hissed menacingly. "You couldn't even kill me once." As the monkey spirit king spat these words out, the 22 wolf teeth around his necklace began to flicker. The bloodline power of the wolf teeth flowed and gathered in his body. Before long, a wild aura burst out from him. The monkey spirit king had always been domineering and overbearing. The first 13 wolf teeth possessed blended bloodlines. Under normal circumstances, different bloodlines would be used one at a time to deal with different enemies. But when enraged, the monkey spirit king couldn't care less. He would just deploy all 13 bloodlines he had mastered. The 13 kinds of bloodlines would usually not fuse with each other. At worst, they could even clash. However, the Monkey Spirit King could integrate them forcibly to obtain an unexpectedly destructive power. This was how he had once been able to kill 13 ancient monsters of a powerful race with a single punch, shocking the entire main world. The bold Conjecture House had tried to analyze the technique and recreate this power, but failed. Elder Shui had bitterly noted then that the Monkey Spirit King had simply lucked out and discovered the extremely powerful technique by accident. If anyone else had tried to integrate the bloodlines, they would have died. Now, the Monkey Spirit King meant to use the same method for 22 bloodlines. The bloodlines tangled in his body. One released the smell of fire. Another revealed the power of life. Another sent 1,000 bolts of lightning crackling throughout his body. Even the space around him began to fluctuate. What power is this? The Snake Spirit King was utterly bewildered. The power to kill you, the Monkey Spirit King said with a smirk. A ball of light bloomed from his body like a rapidly growing sun. The light soon devoured him, the Snake Spirit King, and everything within a few miles, including the ball which protected the Snake Spirit King's coordinates. Chapter 3789, Resurrection. The terrifying power of the light ball left everyone shaken. The Bird Masters had always been arrogant. They were convinced that the Bird Spirit King Xian was the most powerful being in the Four Spirits sect. After all, he had taken much of the credit for the rapid development of the Four Spirits sect in the past. But now they weren't so sure as they felt the destructive energy the Monkey Spirit King emanated. Duran shot a concerned look at Lawler and transmitted a question secretly. Do you think our king would win if he were here? But he hasn't awakened. Lawler shot back. But what if he were awake? Duran pressed. He would not win, Lawler replied with conviction. Duran fell silent, struggling with his thoughts. Since we have sworn our unwavering loyalty to the Bird Spirit King, we have to make enemies with other forces. We're working with the Monkey Spirit sect now, but we would probably go back to being in conflict with them in the future. When that time comes, how can we possibly match up to the Monkey Spirit King? Duran thought worriedly. Lawler, however, sensed what was on Duran's mind. Zen is looking for the Human Spirit King. If Zen can find him, the Human Spirit King might be able to save our king. Don't fret too much. There can be peace in the future, Lawler assured him. Lawler kept his next thoughts to himself. Anything can happen. All we can do is wait. Meanwhile, the primeval Lord of Heaven and his companions were completely oblivious to the conversation between the two bird masters. All their attention was fixed on the huge light ball in the distance. The light ball continued to glow for a while before it began to dim and gradually dissipate. The massive body of the Monkey Spirit King came into view. There was no sign of the Snake Spirit King. We won. Our king is invincible. That stupid snake was killed again. Ha ha. Manuel, Tirog and Hagar started shouting, whooping excitedly. The snake goddess shot them an exasperated look that clearly conveyed she thought they were idiots. Where did that space ball go? She asked as she turned to her companions. It appears to be gone, Fuxi replied, scanning his surroundings. Has it been destroyed? So the Snake Spirit King was killed just like that? The primeval Lord of Heaven said in disbelief. That snake was giving himself too much credit. It might never have occurred to him that the Monkey Spirit King could be this strong, Gong Gong pointed out. The ball had contained the Snake Spirit King's coordinates. If the ball had been destroyed, the coordinates likely had been, too. If that were the case, the Snake Spirit King wouldn't be able to come back from the dead. Once a treacherous being's coordinates were destroyed, it would mean final, eternal death for them. The Snake Spirit King would be no exception. I wonder if the Monkey Spirit King is all right. He's not moving, the snake goddess said, arching her eyebrows at his figure in the distance. These monkey masters aren't even astute enough to worry about their king, she thought huffily. It wasn't long before more people began to suspect something amiss with the Monkey Spirit King. He had remained still since he took out the Snake Spirit King, looking exhausted. Soon enough, cracks began to appear on his tough body, countless white fragments flaking off. Your Majesty, are you all right? Manuel shouted as he bolted toward the Monkey Spirit King. It finally occurred to Manuel something was wrong. The Monkey Spirit King shattered into pieces and evaporated before Manuel could even reach him. When the Monkey Spirit King released the overwhelming energy, the light of annihilation had enveloped him and the Snake Spirit King. Neither could survive that. In the next second, the Monkey Spirit King's coordinates on the altar emitted golden lights. A massive foot came out, followed by another, followed by legs, a torso, arms, and head. It wasn't long before the Monkey Spirit King had emerged fully again. Your Majesty, it's our king. Our king came back. The monkey masters roared in celebration again. The Monkey Spirit King had just won a big victory. With the Snake Spirit King dead, there was nothing else that could be a threat to them. This also came as a relief to the human spirits and the bird masters. The Snake Spirit King's coordinates have been destroyed, so he won't resurrect. So this is the end of the war. We won, of course we won, our king is invincible, ha ha. But while the monkey masters cheered, something began to go awry with the Monkey Spirit King again. Black cracks started appearing again on the Monkey Spirit King, crawling all over his body and causing white fragments to flake off him until they were scattered all over the altar. The fragments soon dissipated into nothing again. The newly revived Monkey Spirit King had just died again. The monkey masters were dumbfounded. What is happening to our king? Hagar exclaimed, panic starting to overcome him. Manuel stepped up to the altar and looked closer at the Monkey Spirit King's coordinates. Our king just came back to life. No one attacked him, so why did he perish again? Manuel murmured in confusion, thinking aloud. The primeval Lord of Heaven, the Snake Goddess and the others soon joined him in inspecting the Monkey Spirit King's coordinates. They had met lots of treacherous beings over the years, but they had never seen such a strange phenomenon before. Before long, the Monkey Spirit King's coordinates began glowing again. His huge body once again emerged from the coordinates. A pained expression lined the face of the resurrected Monkey Spirit King. He opened his mouth to say something, but before any words could leave his lips, he broke into pieces and disappeared into thin air again. Treacherous beings could resurrect endlessly while their coordinates remained intact. But if they died too many times in a short period, it took them longer and longer to come back. Everyone watched in helpless bewilderment as the Monkey Spirit King came back to life once more. It was his third resurrection, but just like before, he didn't even have the time to say anything before he vanished. After that, he resurrected and died a fourth time. And then a fifth time. After the Monkey Spirit King's fifth death, the light that his coordinates emitted began to dim. The Monkey Spirit King was incredibly strong, but after the successive resurrections, it would take some time for his coordinates to accumulate enough energy to bring him back to life again. What the hell is going on? This is insane. Manuel and Tirog were in distress. The other monkey masters were likewise stumped. Their race weren't known for intelligence, so this was quite an insurmountable problem for them. This isn't good, the Snake Goddess warned, her eyes trained on something in the distance. The snake spirits and the snake masters had just revived and were starting to swarm back toward them. The primeval Lord of Heaven snorted. They're nothing without the Snake Spirit King. They still had the bird masters, the monkey masters and the human spirits on their side. They could easily defeat the Snake Spirit King's subordinates. As soon as Manuel, Tirog and Hagar caught sight of the snake spirits, they started snarling ferociously. They had no idea what had happened to the Monkey Spirit King, but they knew the Snake Spirit King was responsible for it. They were raring to vent their anger on the members of the Snake Spirit sect. I'm not talking about them. The Snake Goddess shook her head and pointed at the sky. A black light had appeared out of nowhere, like a shadow in the sky. The black light was exactly where the ball had been before. The primeval Lord of Heaven furrowed his brows as he watched it grow. His eyes soon widened in horror. The black light gradually expanded, revealing the ball within it. The Snake Spirit King's massive coordinates remained intact inside the ball. A thick tongue slithered out of the coordinates, followed by the Snake Spirit King's head and body. All the creatures on the altar were rendered paralyzed at the sight of the Snake Spirit King's resurrection. Chapter 3790, Freeze. Oh, it was dangerous. The Snake Spirit King's voice echoed from above. The power in Orlando's blow went beyond Cornelius's expectations. It actually could have broken his guiding barrier. The guiding barrier was the ball that protected his coordinates. It was also the most useful and strongest ability of the space guiding stone. At the time, Cornelius had been too stunned to make a move. Fortunately for him, the black light was able to protect his coordinates right in the nick of time. Otherwise, he'd probably be dead by now. Cornelius, what have you done to our king? Manuel roared furiously. What did I do? The Snake Spirit King echoed with an amused smile. I simply cursed him. The curse he was talking about was by no means simple. No matter how powerful a curse was, it could only affect the current state, but his curse could directly affect the coordinates. Remove the curse, or else, I will kill you. Manuel's face contorted in anger, his eyes blazing with killing intent. Baring his two fangs, he growled menacingly at the Snake Spirit King. You, kill me. The Snake Spirit King chuckled dryly, evidently unimpressed. Manuel was famous back then for claiming he was only second to the four kings in power. However, there was still a big gap between his strength and the four kings. Moreover, he was a treacherous being now. He had been staying in the Night View Island for so long that he wasn't able to improve his strength. Of course, Manuel spat. Rage began to consume him. He no longer feared the Snake Spirit King. As he stamped his foot onto the ground violently, the earth beneath him cracked under the impact. Then, he rushed towards the Snake Spirit King like a meteor. Poor guy. The Snake Spirit King sighed as he calmly watched the Monkey Master approach him. Before Manuel could even get close, an invisible space wall suddenly formed between him and Manuel. Boom! Manuel crashed into the space wall with full force. Instantly, he was enveloped by the space wall, like a mollusk being squeezed by its own shell. More space walls appeared and formed a cube around Manuel, trapping him inside. The cube of space walls began to shrink rapidly. The burly and strong body of Manuel shrank and filled the space within the cube, until his body followed the shape of his prison. In the end, what was left of Manuel was a small, white cube. Fortunately, he was a treacherous being. If it were a corporeal body that was squeezed into the cube, it wouldn't have stood a chance and would have violently been squished to death. Coo, coo, coo. The cube kept on shrinking. Manuel's body, which was originally several dozen feet high, turned into a white cube that was 3 feet tall and wide. What a weakling. As the Snake Spirit King spoke, he sensed a fluctuation in the space. You're courting death, he called out coldly. Swoosh, crack. Then, Tirog and the Wing King stumbled out of the space. The two of them had wanted to save Manuel in secret. They couldn't stand a chance against the ball floating in the air, but they had enough strength to break the cube that imprisoned Manuel. The Wing King had been racking his brains, trying to find the right opportunity to make a move. When he saw Tirog suddenly disappear, he followed suit and transformed into an invisible wind that followed him. But the Snake Spirit King was powerful. With the Space Guiding Stone and the Limited Omnipotent Stone in his clutches, no one could defeat him here. Even if he had come so close to death just now, it was only because he had been too arrogant. Otherwise, no matter how powerful the Monkey Spirit King was, there was still no chance to beat him. You two, go to hell. Realizing he'd been found out, the Wing King gently spread his wings. However, his wings were shattered before he could even fully spread them. Before he knew it, a square space encased him. With a loud crackling noise, he became an emerald green cube. Suffering the same fate as Manuel, Tirog was trapped. Once he'd dealt with them, the Snake Spirit King barked, Sewell, you may go up now. The battle is over. Sewell had been waiting with a group of snake spirits. As the Snake Spirit King gave the order, he let out a hiss, and all the snake spirits immediately spread out to surround the altar. Meanwhile, in the infinite space, the number of monsters with 2 feet and 2 pincers was dwindling. On the other hand, the number of Zen's clones floating in the void soared. Although the irregular heavy sword was still constantly creating monsters, the speed at which they were created became slower and slower, and the quality of these newly born monsters grew poorer each time. It was only a matter of time before Zen's clones finished them off. Finally, the irregular heavy sword was exhausted. It's over, Zen said with a satisfied smile. You've lost. Even if the irregular heavy sword had turned into the death sword, the energy it possessed still had a limit. At this point, its limit had been reached. With the support of his primitive land, Zen was invincible. It had been a mistake for the irregular heavy sword to choose to fight him this way. When the last monster was finished off by Zen's clones, Zen willed the clones to flow towards him, turn into small dots of light and finally, merge into his cinnabar field. The black armor was still silently holding the death sword as he did this. The irregular heavy sword had emotions, which couldn't be perceived by outsiders. Only its owner could sense what it was feeling. Kincaid could clearly feel that the irregular heavy sword was in a depressed state. This guy was too hard on my sword. Kincaid thought almost wistfully, as he had never felt such an emotion from the irregular heavy sword before. Every time he held this sword, he could feel its fighting spirit and the strong connection between them. Even after he had become a treacherous being, the irregular heavy sword was still loyal to him. In the past many years, when he was unable to move, the sword still cultivated on its own. Although Kincaid was tempted to share the common hatred with the irregular heavy sword, he had hoped that ultimately, Zen would win. When he felt the sword's depression, he felt bittersweet. However, the depression only lasted for a moment. The next thing he knew, Kincaid sensed the irregular heavy sword had made up its mind. What do you want to do? Kincaid was shocked. The death sword was the ultimate form of the irregular heavy sword. If it couldn't defeat its opponent at its best, then that was it. Buzz. The unfolded infinite world suddenly disappeared, and Zen returned to the stone hall. Soon after, the black armor pointed its irregular heavy sword to Zen, and white dots of light and a cold aura emanated from the blade. You still want to fight? Zen asked with a frown. The irregular heavy sword might be powerful, but Zen had found a way to deal with it. Did this sword have another trump card? However, to Zen's surprise, the irregular heavy sword did not launch an attack. Instead, the white dots of light and the cold aura created a cold prison. Gradually, the dots of light landed on the heavy armor. Layers of white frost appeared and condensed into blocks of ice, sealing the sword and the heavy armor within. What's happening? Zen was stunned, unsure of how to react. This sword is intelligent, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord explained softly. It knows that it is no match for you and can't protect Kincaid in the black armor, so it freezes itself. Even at this time, the sword still protected its owner. How loyal it was. Chapter 3791, Gained Recognition. Zen walked forward and gently tapped on the ice of the black armor. A touch of coldness condensed white frost on his hand. What should we do now? Carry him out like this? Zen asked, furrowing his brows. With Zen's strength, it'd be pretty simple to break through this layer of ice. The issue now was whether this was the right way to proceed. Master Kincaid hasn't awakened yet. I think you'd better move him out, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord suggested. He thought of this out of respect for Kincaid. After all, it was the human spirit king who was inside the black armor. Okay, Zen nodded. They figured it might be better for Zen to carry Kincaid out first before they made any rash decisions. Perhaps by then, they could think of a way to wake up Kincaid. However, at this moment, the ancestry-level bloodline spoke. Zen, dismantle the black armor and the sword. Zen was slightly stunned. Why? The ability of this irregular heavy sword is very similar to mine. I want to explore it, the ancestry-level bloodline explained. The ability of this sword to constantly modify the rules had truly impressed Zen. It was impossible for anyone else to leave the infinite space. The suggestion of the ancestry-level bloodline was aligned with Zen's inclinations, but he was still a little hesitant. Isn't it disrespectful to do that? Since the human spirit sect has been reduced to such a situation, there is no need to consider if it is respectful or not, the ancestry-level bloodline replied bluntly. That may be true, Zen nodded. He bowed to the black armor and said, I broke in here to save the human spirit king. I didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive me if I do. The irregular heavy sword had proven itself to be intelligent, but Zen didn't know whether it could understand him or not. After saying that, Zen lightly patted the surface of the ice with his palm. Pop! A muffled sound rang out. Then, hairline cracks appeared inside the originally clear ice, until it collapsed into countless finger-sized ice blocks that fell to the ground. If these finger-sized ice blocks were thrown into any of the large provinces of the source world, they would have launched an ice age over the whole area. Once they melted, an ocean would be formed. However, the irregular heavy sword was obviously not willing to give up. Although it did not attempt to attack Zen again, the moment the solid ice broke, it released white light dots, quickly imprisoning it in the black armor in ice once more. It seemed determined to struggle till the end. Pop! Patiently, Zen broke the ice again. Knowing that the irregular heavy sword would freeze itself again, Zen immediately reached in to grab the sword hilt before it could take action. Simultaneously, a flame cyclone formed in his palm. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Under the intense heat of the flame cyclone, the cold air of the irregular heavy sword could not be condensed into ice. Buzz. Even then, the sword was still unwilling to give up. It trembled in Zen's hand and tried to break free, but Zen clasped it firmly. During this whole time, the irregular heavy sword was quietly communicating with Kincaid. Kincaid could roughly tell what was happening outside. After sensing the unwillingness of the irregular heavy sword, he advised, "You've already lost. According to the rule, he's your master, as I also became your master in this way back then." The sword and the armor made of the life iron had been found and obtained by Kincaid and Xian in the deep space. When he met it for the first time, Kincaid used all kinds of methods to subdue it. After years of companionship, he and the sword grew to become comrades in arms. What? You say you didn't have a master at that time, but now your master is me? Kincaid once again felt a strong emotion from the irregular heavy sword. He shook his head and sighed. According to the standards of the main world, I'm already dead. Now I can't even wake up. How can I be your master? The most important thing is that he is not our enemy. He has come to save me. I believe in this human being. He is the extension of our human spirits. Please respect my judgment. You can trust him. Kincaid urged. The truth of the matter was that Kincaid might have had some doubts about Zen. However, Zen standing before him was probably his only hope. He had to trust him. Otherwise, he would probably be trapped there forever. Finally convinced, the irregular heavy sword stopped trembling. Zen gripped the hilt of the sword and pointed it upward. Buzz! The cracks on the blade emitted rays of red light, and a strange emotion that resembled longing was transmitted to Zen. Zen sensed that it was hungry and thirsty, and it needed energy. At first, he didn't know how to respond, but the ancestry-level bloodline also sensed its hunger. Immense energy like seawater surged into Zen's arm and flowed into the irregular heavy sword. The irregular heavy sword did not even try to repel the energy given by the ancestry-level bloodline. In fact, it seemed to lap it up ravenously. "Is this sword born for you?" Zen said jokingly. The ancestry-level bloodline said, "I don't know, but I must have some sort of connection with it." After the irregular heavy sword's hunger was satiated, it let out a soft buzzing noise. Then, the black armor began to disintegrate. Clatter. Helmet, breastplate, shoulder pads. The pieces of broken black armor suddenly flew towards Zen. In the blink of an eye, Zen found himself neatly covered in the black armor. This armor. While Zen was still caught in surprise, it vaguely registered on him that a treacherous being was standing in the exact same place the black armor had just been. This treacherous being was tall and strong, bearing a handsome face. A wild and keen aura emanated from him. This was the human spirit king, Kincaid. On the chest of Kincaid, there were 2 golden crosses floating. They were his coordinates. "What type of treacherous being is Kincaid's body?" Zen asked aloud. After thinking for a while, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord replied, "He is neither of the killing type nor the friendly type. The kind of treacherous being which remains motionless belongs to the sleeping type." After all, it wasn't Kincaid that had attacked Zen, but his sword. Then Zen wanted to ask how to deal with the treacherous being, but before the words could leave his lips, a rumble suddenly came from above. The entire altar had begun to shake. "They can't hold on any longer." Zen's eyebrows raised slightly, anxiety suddenly welling up within him. He knew that the Snake Spirit King would definitely attack the altar, but he had trusted that the combined power of the human spirits, the monkey spirits and the bird spirits was enough to resist for a period of time. Thus, Zen swiftly took out his Sumeru space and tossed the human spirit king's treacherous being body and coordinates into it. Then, he spared no time and quickly left the stone hall. When Zen pushed the door open, the old man guarding the ice hall jerked his head up. The old man's obsession was Kincaid, after all. Naturally, he cared about everything that took place within the stone hall. When the old man saw the heavy black armor push the door open and come out, he froze in place for a few moments. His originally dull eyes suddenly flashed with life. He thought that Kincaid had awakened, and his obsession was instantly satisfied, so he suddenly woke up. "Master Kincaid." The old man strode to Zen excitedly and knelt down on one knee before him. You have woken up." Zen, stunned, embarrassedly explained, "I'm not Kincaid." The old man slowly stood up and looked at him with confusion. "It's you," he cried as it dawned on him. "You are that human being. You defeated Master Kincaid. He hasn't woken up." "No, his treacherous being body has been stored into my Sumeru space," Zen answered. "Why?" the old man demanded, unable to contain his excitement. Zen waved his hand. "The Snake Spirit King is attacking outside the altar. I need to deal with that first." As soon as he finished speaking, Zen headed straight to the gate without another word. The old man stood there in a daze for a moment, watching Zen's receding figure. Suddenly, he realized that Kincaid had been taken away by this human, so he hurriedly chased after him. Chapter 3792, The Third Stone. While they were on the altar, the primeval Lord of Heaven and his companions were struggling to hold out against their enemies. Supposedly, eliminating the snake spirits should be a piece of cake, because they had the bird spirits, human spirits, and monkey spirits on their side. However, the Snake Spirit King was alive. This was a huge advantage to the snake spirits. Su'ul's hissing could be heard all throughout the area. Meanwhile, Hagar and Nerus caught sight of Su'ul. They rushed towards him at the same time. The former charged from his left side while the latter charged from his right. Unfortunately, the Monkey Spirit King, Manuel, and Tirog had been cursed. Thus, they were unable to join the battle. Nevertheless, the Monkey Masters didn't feel dejected at all. On the contrary, this made them angrier and more anxious to fight their enemies. Hagar and Nerus, the 2 Monkey Masters, moved extremely fast that Su'ul didn't immediately realize what was going on. "If anything happens to our king, we will annihilate all of you," Hagar roared as he was charging at Su'ul. He stretched out his hands, and a black stick instantly shot out of his right hand. Under his careful control, he aimed the black stick at Sewell. As Hagar got closer to Sewell, he directed his stick towards his opponent's shoulder. The once solid stick suddenly transformed into liquid. The black ink splashed all over Sewell's body. Hagar was one of the weakest among the monkey masters in terms of brute strength. Nonetheless, he was pretty good with sealing things. What he unleashed was the ink sealing technique. It was a theurgy devised by the people in the Bold Conjecture House. It was regarded as one of their top theurgies. Soon enough, the black ink had covered Sewell. Nerus muttered under his breath, "Perfect. I'm going to cut him into pieces." After Hagar performed the ink sealing technique, Nerus appeared on Sewell's side. Colorful fingernails grew on top of Nerus' original ones. These colorful fingernails were actually made from energy. Each one was as sharp as a dagger. In an instant, Sewell sustained deep scratches from Nerus' sharp fingernails. When Hagar's ink landed on him, his movements slowed down. He felt like his body suddenly became vulnerable. Hence, Nerus was able to rip his body inch by inch. At first, Sewell didn't take the monkey masters seriously. He thought that they would surely win this war. However, Hagar and Nerus' combined attacks completely caught him off guard. The worst part of it was he could not even defend himself. They already destroyed 1/3 of Sewell's body. But suddenly, Hagar and Nerus felt a heavy pressure coming from above them. As they were about to get pounded into the ground by the extreme pressure, they attempted to move aside. However, the force converged at them from every direction. In just a blink of an eye, the two of them turned into cube-shaped bricks. Sewell gathered all his strength and broke the ink sealing technique. With a trace of shame all over his face, he said, "Thank you, my king." These monkey masters are very powerful, especially now that they want to avenge their king. They are going all out. "You should be more careful," the Snake Spirit King said to him. "Yes, sir," Sewell responded with an energetic nod. All at once, several bone spikes extruded from Sewell's body. They began to move towards the altar at an even greater speed. One by one, the bird masters, monkey masters, and human spirits left the altar and attacked the snake spirits. Every time they did so, the Snake Spirit King would turn them into bricks. The Snake Spirit King didn't really kill them. He merely trapped them in a very tight space. This way, they would be unable to move an inch. After a while, more human spirits, bird masters, and monkey masters were turned into bricks. The primeval Lord of Heaven, the Snake Goddess, and the others furrowed their brows. There was no way they could win now that the Snake Spirit King kept turning their allies into bricks. Even though they once confronted lots of formidable opponents, they were able to hold out against them. But as they looked at the gigantic Snake Spirit King, they felt powerless. What else could they do now? They had never been so frustrated. At this point, they were stumped and had no idea how to defeat such an invincible being. The monkey masters were trapped in the space blocks one after another. Soon enough, they were scattered all around the altar. The bird masters suffered the same fate. Afterward, the human spirits also ended up inside the space blocks. In the end, the primeval Lord of Heaven and his companions were the only ones standing on the altar. They were now backed into a corner. Moreover, they had no trump card up their sleeves. This was such a humiliating situation. The Snake Spirit King looked down at them. His face revealed a playful smile. Zhurong narrowed his eyes and said, "I will fight him to the death." Even at this point, he still had a burning determination to defeat the Snake Spirit King. The heat emanated from his body and began to spread. In a flash, he burst into flames. Tongues of fire radiated from his body. He jumped up and attempted to attack the Snake Spirit King. However, he immediately felt a tremendous force coming at him. In the blink of an eye, he was condensed into a cube and dropped on the ground. As a result, he couldn't move an inch. "As a matter of fact, I should thank you," said the Snake Spirit King calmly. "What do you mean, thank us? What are you getting at?" The primeval Lord of Heaven looked at the Snake Spirit King with a somber expression on his face. "That human named Zen got his hands on something that I wasn't able to get," the Snake Spirit King answered. He could see what was happening in the altar using the limited omnipotent stone. Did Zen manage to free the human Spirit King? The primeval Lord of Heaven turned around to look down at the gate. "Yes, he did," the Snake Spirit King replied. His eyes lit up in excitement. "I know he's your only hope. He's mine as well." When they heard this, the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, and the primeval Lord of Heaven were completely bewildered. Did he just say Zen was his hope? What is he talking about? They all wondered about the same thing. At that moment, a buzzing sound came from the inside of altar. It was immediately followed by a burst of cold air. They heard a crisp sound of footsteps coming from it. Zen emerged from the gate clad in black armor. He walked up the stairs with a heavy sword in his hand. As he stood on the top step, he glanced around. When he caught sight of numerous cubes scattered on the ground, he narrowed his eyes. "You were waiting for me," he said as he raised his head and stared at the Snake Spirit King in the sky. "Yes, I was," the Snake Spirit King answered. "I have been waiting for this moment for far too long. You didn't let me down." "Good, very good," the Snake Spirit King continued. There was a trace of suppressed excitement in his voice. Zen remained standing there and kept looking at the Snake Spirit King calmly. Without saying anything, Zen raised his sword. Even though it was a heavy sword, he was wielding as though it was as light as a feather. As the irregular sword slashed through the air, it made harsh cutting sounds. "You went into the altar yourself and failed to beat Master Kincaid. Do you really think you can defeat me now?" Zen finally spoke. The Snake Spirit King flashed him a confident smile. "Of course, I can," the Snake Spirit King responded. "What makes you think I am going to lose against you?" Zen asked once more. "Don't worry, you'll see soon enough." Half of the Snake Spirit King's body was inside the coordinates, which were inside the ball. Gradually, he went out of the coordinates and returned to his normal figure. There were 2 stones floating in front of his forehead. One was the diamond-shaped limited omnipotent stone, and the other was the triangular space-guiding stone. A black round gem began to appear in front of his forehead just as a black light flickered slightly around it. The gem exuded a faint black smoke that seeped into his scales. Shortly after, a layer of black scales appeared on the surface of the Snake Spirit King's body. "Come up here," the Snake Spirit King said. Just then, a space wall appeared under Zen's feet and sent him up in the air. But suddenly, they heard a light cracking sound. Zen stepped lightly on the space wall and broke it into pieces. "I can do it myself," he said. Chapter 3793, The Might of the Sword. The space wall, carefully crafted by the space-guiding stone, was so formidable that it was impossible to resist its force. That was why even the Great Ape King, Lawler, and Duran were trapped by it. However, once Zen raised his foot and stomped hard on it with his might, it crumbled down as though it were nothing to him. Then, he soared into the sky in a fleeting moment. The Snake Goddess moved her head up as she kept her gaze fixated on Zen's rising figure and asked, "What do you think Zen meant when he said Kincaid defeated the Snake Spirit King?" "The more important question is, why is Kincaid not here? He's been freed, hasn't he?" The primeval Lord of Heaven sounded just as puzzled. Just as they pondered over to make sense of the situation in their heads, their train of thought was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a treacherous being at the square entrance. It was an elderly-looking human spirit. The primeval Lord of Heaven let out a short gasp as his eyes fell on the elderly figure. Recovering from his state of disbelief, he frantically cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. "Master Kincaid." "What, Master Kincaid?" Fuxi, the Snake Goddess, and the others switched their gazes from the primeval Lord of Heaven to the elderly figure that stood in the distance. Judging from the primeval Lord of Heaven's gesture, they instinctively concluded that man to be Kincaid. However, the old man diffused their suspicions with a slight wave of his hand as he spoke. "No, you've got it wrong. I'm not Master Kincaid." "Then, who are you?" "I'm simply Master Kincaid's servant. My name is Corbett," the elderly man answered in a dignified tone. In the entire human spirit sect, Corbett was Kincaid's most loyal and sincerest servant. He had been serving him for countless years without faltering. Even though he had transformed into a treacherous being after he died, he still continued to perform his duties by guarding the altar. "Master Corbett, what happened inside the altar? Where is Master Kincaid?" the primeval Lord of Heaven asked, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Was the Snake Spirit King really defeated by Master Kincaid? The Snake Goddess voiced her concerns after him. Corbett looked at the Snake Spirit King in the sky. A shadow of sadness hovered over his eyes as his expression turned gloomy. Yes, the Snake Spirit King had entered the altar before and failed to resolve the trap set up by Master Kincaid, which resulted in his death. So the key to the altar is a trap. The Snake Goddess's expression switched as she raised her brow. "That's right." Corbett nodded to her question and continued. "The Snake Spirit King, as a treacherous being, couldn't defeat Master Kincaid, so he wanted to lure someone else to enter the altar." Upon hearing what happened, the Snake Goddess and the primeval Lord of Heaven gasped in unison. Before they could recover from the shocking news, Fuxi asked a direct question: "Where is Master Kincaid right now? Why isn't he here?" The sole reason behind them coming to the altar was to look for the human Spirit King. But Zen came out alone, shrouded in heavy armor and wielding a sword. It didn't make any sense. What was going on? Zen has placed Master Kincaid in his Sumeru space. He hasn't awakened yet, Corbett sighed. After being exposed to the truth, the primeval Lord of Heaven, Fuxi, and the Snake Goddess were all rendered speechless as they fell into a crippling depression. They had pinned all their hopes on the human Spirit King and were at a loss for words. They each had sacrificed so much to get here, only to find out they were being used as pawns in the carefully crafted scheme of the Snake Spirit King all this while. Naturally, they felt a deep sense of helplessness overcome them as they felt their hearts sink. Let's not drop all our weapons and lay waste to all our efforts. Maybe all of this can be reversed. Maybe, Zen could win. Gong Gong, who had kept silent all this while, suddenly spoke up to lift everyone's spirits. Don't underestimate him and his talent to turn the tables in his favor. He has inherited the powerful ancestry-level bloodline. Don't be so pessimistic. There are many powerful warriors in our sect, and each of them has inherited the abilities of the ancestry-level bloodline, but in the end, they still suffered the same fate and ended up like this, Corbett said, shaking his head. No, Master Corbett, you misunderstood what I said. Zen didn't inherit the abilities of the ancestry-level bloodline. He has inherited the complete ancestry-level bloodline itself. Perhaps Corbett was still in a daze from his recent awakening, which clouded his thoughts. After taking a few seconds to process what he just heard, Corbett blurted out abruptly, wait. What, are you telling me he has inherited the complete ancestry-level bloodline? Are you serious? Yeah, he's telling the truth, the primeval Lord of Heaven nodded along as he responded. Are you absolutely sure about this? Corbett was still in a state of utter disbelief. The primeval Lord of Heaven stepped forward to place his hand on Corbett's shoulder and responded to clear the air, as Eternal Realm warriors, we know that clearly. There's no doubt about it. Zen can use the power of the four quadrants at will, which is given by the ancestry-level bloodline. Just as those words escaped the mouth of the primeval Lord of Heaven, Corbett's eyes lit up as though they regained their lost vitality. No wonder he defeated Master Kincaid. That sword, yes, there's a chance he could win with that sword. Corbett spoke in a high-pitched voice, unable to hide the excitement sprouting within him. Swoosh. At this moment, the irregular heavy sword that Zen wielded began to reflect strong emotions of fury and anger through its demeanor. Although it couldn't speak, it was capable of transmitting human emotions. It could feel anger and sadness. Face to face with the culprit responsible for the death of the human Spirit King, the irregular heavy sword was brimming with unparalleled rage. You want to kill him, don't you? Zen addressed the irregular heavy sword as he felt its emotions from its behavior. Immediately after hearing what Zen had to say, the irregular heavy sword responded with a hint of joy as if to confirm what he felt. I can understand your thirst for vengeance. I feel the same way, Zen said as he smiled warmly while tightening his grip on the irregular heavy sword. When he looked up, the Snake Spirit King had vanished from where he once stood. Without wasting a single moment, Zen quickly passed the space of over 10,000 feet to close the distance between him and the Snake Spirit King. As if to assert his dominance over it, he raised the irregular heavy sword and pointed its end towards the Snake Spirit King's forehead. Show me what you got, Zen said as he challenged the Snake Spirit King. Buzz. The surface of the irregular heavy sword suddenly cracked up. The sword itself was forged using 15 pieces of life iron. Ever since it was brought back from the deep space by Kincaid, not once was it used up to its full potential. The reason was simple. For it to cultivate its maximum strength, it needed to absorb the bloodline power, but it was difficult for Kincaid to nurture it although he was powerful. But now, it was continuously absorbing Zen's bloodline power. The high reserves of power contained within the complete ancestry level was inexhaustible. It could absorb it to maintain its maximum strength without having to worry about it ever being depleted, making its overall strength second to none. Buzz. A vortex-shaped energy appeared in the center of the 15 pieces of life iron and sucked the huge body of the Snake Spirit King into it. Destroy him. Zen moved swiftly and approached the Snake Spirit King at an incredible speed. In a fleeting moment, he activated the irregular heavy sword and released the vortex-shaped energy in an instant. However, the Snake Spirit King was not a small fly who would let Zen's first move to decide his fate. The limited omnipotent stone was completely focused on Zen. Every detail of the way Zen moved, such as how his hair danced to the rhythm of the wind, and how his heart beat faster every time he felt an adrenaline rush, constantly flowed into the Snake Spirit King's mind. Suddenly, the space-guiding stone lit up and began to flicker with a blue light. Endless space. Layers upon layers of space constantly appeared in an endless loop, enveloping the massive body of the Snake Spirit King. 10 layers, 100 layers, 1,000 layers, 10,000 layers. As a holy item, the space guiding stone had the absolute priority to utilize the energy of the holy pillar. When the stone began to use the power of the pillar, the countless other shore tokens on the other shore began to dim down as though they were rid of their usual essence. They temporarily lost the support of the pillar. Some other shore realm masters began to suspect a change in their other shore tokens as they felt their energy drain out enough to make them useless. To substitute that lost energy in the other shore tokens, they tried to inject some from the divine crystals. However, even the energy that the divine crystals harnessed disappeared without a trace. The endless space was solidified to an extended degree. However, the moment the vortex-shaped energy touched it, the Snake Spirit King couldn't resist the pressure and was quickly swept into it by force, causing him to spin rapidly in the air. In the blink of an eye, he spun tens of thousands of times, and his long body kept on twisting and turning helplessly. At the same time, countless spiral cracks appeared on the surface of the endless space. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, 3 deafening sounds were heard, and the endless space was broken. Even so, the Snake Spirit King's body was still spinning against his will at a high speed. Even though his body had been twisted to pieces, it refused to halt its movement. It was as if it was a piece of cloth that was helplessly being swept away in the strong wind. This sword. Watching this scene unravel before his eyes, Zen couldn't help but feel awestruck. Both he and the sword used the power of the ancestry-level bloodline, but the sword seemed to have a lot more knowledge than him about it, and even more so than the ancestry-level bloodline itself. The vortex that appeared to be nothing short of ordinary actually held such high reserves of power. Chapter 3794, Wrong Evaluation. Treacherous beings' bodies were quite resilient. Even if they were torn to shreds, they wouldn't die, let alone be twisted. Splash! Amidst the howling wind, the Snake Spirit King finally broke free. His huge snake body was like a long, vicious whip as it ruthlessly lashed at the ground. With a crisp sound, the entire Jade Pure realm trembled under the impact, and Cornelius sank into the ground. Zen shook the hilt of his sword slightly, urging the 15 pieces of life iron to return to their original positions to form the irregular heavy sword. Taking a step forward, Zen suddenly appeared right above the head of the Snake Spirit King. The second strike. Before the Snake Spirit King could get up from the ground, Zen had already thrust his sword downward. Buzz! The power of the ancestry-level bloodline was once again released, channeled through the irregular long sword. The cracks on the irregular heavy sword burst forth a blue light. It possessed more than 10 abilities from the space-time quadrant. Now, neither Zen nor the ancestry-level bloodline had a clue how the irregular heavy sword would act out. The ancestry-level bloodline only needed to provide energy, while Zen only needed to thrust the sword out. The rest was left to the irregular heavy sword itself. Pop! The tip of the irregular heavy sword's blade connected with the Snake Spirit King's forehead. Immediately after, palm-sized blue triangle patterns appeared all over the surface of the Snake Spirit King's body. From his huge head to his wriggling tail, tens of millions of blue triangles lit up. While Zen was confused at the sight of these countless blue triangles, the Snake Spirit King felt a trace of panic. Then, the blue triangles began to split apart. In the blink of an eye, the Snake Spirit King disintegrated into tens of millions of triangles. So fast! Zen exclaimed. Previously, when he used the blood-controlling method to activate the ancestry-level bloodline, he could also achieve a similar effect. However, he'd never imagined he'd be able to cut the huge snake's body into countless pieces. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Although the Snake Spirit King was cut into tens of millions of pieces, he didn't accept defeat just yet. The triangles quickly transformed into small black and white snakes, all of which gathered in one spot to merge into one complete body. As soon as the Snake Spirit King recovered, Zen appeared in front of him again. Zen didn't plan on giving him any room to breathe. The third strike. Once more, the irregular heavy sword absorbed the energy of the ancestry-level bloodline. From the cracks of the 15 pieces of life iron, 2 colors, green and gray, flickered alternately. These were the 6 abilities of the creation quadrant and the life quadrant. Zen watched expectantly, his eyes flashing with curiosity. He wanted to know what kind of theurgy the irregular heavy sword would unleash. It wasn't just him. Even the primeval Lord of Heaven, the Snake Goddess, Fuxi and the others were squirming with excitement, overjoyed at how this battle was turning out. Previously, the Snake Spirit King had used the space guiding stone to suppress all of them. It was simply too depressing, as they felt they didn't stand a chance. Now, as they watched Zen beat up the Snake Spirit King, they felt a sense of relief and hope. Meanwhile, the Snake Spirit King felt the opposite. Now, he was the depressed one. It was too discouraging, being beaten to a pulp by a mere human. This had never happened in tens of millions of years. Of course, the Snake Spirit King knew that this was all because of that irregular heavy sword. Back then, it was not that powerful in the hands of Kincaid. Go to hell, the Snake Spirit King hissed, finally counter-attacking. Clouds of black mist suddenly burst out from the black round gem, and destructive power poured out like crazy. Now, Zen had a very keen sense of discerning energy. He could tell that the energy contained in the black mist was so terrifying that he had no choice but to retreat. Splash! A black light column shot out from the clouds of black mist, heading straight for Zen's head. As the black light column descended, the space guiding stone flashed with a blue light. The space around Zen suddenly felt extremely viscous. Swish! Before Zen could retreat, the black light column hit his body, completely enveloping him. When the black light dissipated, Zen was nowhere to be found. The Snake Spirit King studied his surroundings suspiciously, and even the limited omnipotent stone searched crazily. However, they still weren't able to locate Zen. The Snake Spirit King frowned slightly, trying to calm himself down. According to the black light, Zen should have been able to defeat Kincaid and bring out the sword smoothly after entering the altar. The Snake Spirit King was confident he could easily defeat Zen and take back the sword. This was his plan originally. However, Zen's strength vastly exceeded his expectations. This countered what the black light said. Did the black light make a mistake? Or could it have lied to him? These thoughts raced through the Snake Spirit King's mind as he desperately tried to locate Zen. It would have been fine if this was all a mistake. The Snake Spirit King knew the strength of the black light. If it attacked, no matter how strong Zen was, he wouldn't stand a chance. If the black light had lied to him, however, the situation would be troublesome. Buzz! Nearby, Zen's figure appeared, but as soon as he did, a black light column shot towards him. Boom! The black light column pierced through Zen's shadow and hit the ground. Buzz! In the next moment, Zen's figure flashed from behind the Snake Spirit King, and the black light column shot towards him once again. Boom! 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 With the power of the limited omnipotent stone, no matter where Zen appeared, the Snake Spirit King could always find out in an instant and attack him with the black light column. That black gem is very powerful, Zen commented, as he appeared briefly from behind the Snake Spirit King once more. Shouldn't it consume a lot of other shore power? This time, even though the Snake Spirit King knew where Zen was, he didn't use the black light column, or else it would hit him. The energy of holy items was limited. The limited omnipotent stone, the space guiding stone and this black gem consumed a lot of energy of the holy pillar. When the Snake Spirit King used these three holy items, most of the other shore tokens could not be used properly. So what? The energy of the holy pillar is much more than you think. I can catch you before the energy is exhausted. Once the Snake Spirit King finished speaking, the space guiding stone flashed again with a blue light. Zen, who had been traveling through space, was forced out. Crack, crack, crack. This was the opportunity that the Snake Spirit King had been waiting for. Countless space walls surrounded Zen. Simultaneously, the black light column enveloped him. There's no escaping this, the Snake Spirit King cried excitedly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. This time, the black light column poured into Zen's body for a few breathless moments. Through the limited omnipotent stone, the Snake Spirit King could feel that Zen's body was slowly being eroded and melted, till it finally disappeared. His biggest trouble was solved. The Snake Spirit King was overjoyed. But at this moment, Zen's voice sounded from behind the Snake Spirit King. I forgot to tell you that your limited omnipotent stone is actually very easy to deceive. What? The Snake Spirit King was confused, about to turn his head towards the voice. However, just as he was turning around, the irregular heavy sword once again pressed against his back, and his body was instantly cut into tens of millions of pieces. At the same time, the blazing white light of annihilation surged out like a tidal wave. Under the erosion of the light of annihilation, the Snake Spirit King's broken body collapsed rapidly. Chapter 3795, Bestowed Strength. When Zen left the stone hall, he had cut a holy stone from the wall. It was a holy stone of the highest grade, even if it was just the size of a fist. The light of annihilation it released was extremely powerful. Zen's own holy stone probably wouldn't be able to kill such a huge treacherous being. Buzz. Buckling under the intensity of the light of annihilation, the Snake Spirit King's body collapsed. The three gemstones went down with him, vanishing into thin air. From the altar, the Snake Goddess and the others were so excited that they almost jumped up and down from happiness. After all, according to their original plan, the human race was not supposed to fight against the Snake Spirit King. The Snake Spirit King's main opponent was the Monkey Spirit King, which was their strongest trump card. After the Monkey Spirit King was defeated and worse, cursed, they had lost their trump card. Theoretically, they had already been defeated. Unexpectedly, at the most critical moment, Zen emerged from the altar with a sword that overpowered the Snake Spirit King. Pop, 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 pop. After the space guiding stone disappeared, the cubic spaces it had created began to lose their power. The square spaces that trapped Manuel and Tirog were the first to explode. They regained their freedom. It took some struggling before their bodies returned to their original shapes. It was suffocating me. Finally, I can breathe. That's the least important part. Zen of the human race has defeated the Snake Spirit King. While they might have been imprisoned, they were still able to observe the fight. They both witnessed how Zen easily defeated the Snake Spirit King with a series of inconceivable attacks. The Snake Masters and Snake Spirits were stunned and confused. In particular, Sewell, Balfour, and the other Snake Masters were at a loss, since they were still under the impression that this was part of the Snake Spirit King's plan. After all, letting Zen take out that sword was part of his plan. Logically speaking, the Snake Spirit King should have had a way to take back the sword, so why was he defeated? This was too strange. However, no one made a move just yet. The Snake Masters, Monkey Masters, and Bird Masters were not in a hurry to fight. After all, they were not the key to the success of this battle, but Zen and the Snake Spirit King. After finally defeating the Snake Spirit King, Zen looked up. A transparent ball was floating there, and the Snake Spirit King's coordinates were hidden within it. If he wanted to completely kill off the Snake Spirit King, he had to destroy this ball. Zen, that ball has a special power to protect it, the Snake Goddess cautioned. Previously, the Monkey Spirit King had gathered all the power contained in the necklace of teeth, almost destroying the ball and the coordinates within it. However, at that critical moment, a black light suddenly appeared and enveloped it. Both the ball itself and the black light were very strange. A special power. Zen fixed his eyes on the ball. He could see the coordinates within the ball flashing with golden light. They contained a lot of energy, but the Snake Spirit King hadn't come back to life yet. Zen took a few steps forward and waved his irregular heavy sword, its blade arcing gracefully in the air. A beam of half-moon-shaped sword radiance shot towards the ball. There was nothing special about this sword radiance, but it should have been powerful enough to cut off the Snake Spirit King's body. Swish! In the blink of an eye, the sword radiance had traveled tens of thousands of feet till it hit the ball. But the ball didn't react, as though it didn't exist. The sword radiance penetrated through it without a sound. Zen blinked. He wasn't surprised. Raising his heavy irregular sword, he whispered, "I'm counting on you." He could feel that the irregular heavy sword was eager to have a try. It was more than willing to end the Snake Spirit King's life. The power of space contained in the ball was quite mysterious and ever elusive. Even the Bird Spirit King, who was proficient in the space rules, couldn't understand it. However, Zen felt confident. The ancestry-level bloodline had a complete space-time quadrant. No matter how special the space power was, it couldn't avoid the 93 abilities in the space-time quadrant. Moreover, the irregular heavy sword could exert the abilities of the ancestry-level bloodline to the extreme. Breaking the ball didn't pose a challenge to him. Zen took a step backward, gearing up to slash another sword strike. Blue light flashed through the cracks on the heavy sword, and a mysterious space aura emanated from it, permeating the atmosphere. It was just as Zen had thought. The irregular heavy sword had used as many as 19 abilities of the space-time quadrant. Just as Zen was about to slash forward, Sewell in the distance suddenly charged straight at him. Although he knew he was no match for Zen, he had to at least try to save the Snake Spirit King. Zen frowned, seeing Sewell from the corner of his eye. He took a step forward, and his figure appeared behind Sewell in a flash, like a ghost. Simultaneously, he brandished the irregular long sword. Swish, 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 the sounds of swift sword slashes rang out. Before he could even cry out, Sewell's body had been cut into tens of thousands of triangles. Zen immediately took out the holy stone from his Sumeru space, activated it, and released the light of annihilation. Sewell's body rapidly collapsed. The other Snake Masters gasped. Sewell was one of the top masters among treacherous beings. Before, Sewell had managed to make a scene on the Night View Island on his own. Now, facing Zen, he didn't even last for a few seconds. When the Monkey Masters, such as Manuel, Tirog and Hagar saw this scene, they trembled slightly. Since they were always the bellicose ones, they couldn't help but compare themselves to Sewell. They had always been keenly aware of the gap between their strength and Sewell's. After all, they had been staying on the Night View Island for so many years. If they were to face Zen, they would probably lose even more miserably. At this moment, they felt lucky and heaved sighs of relief. Fortunately for them, Zen had gone to the Night View Island and sided with them. After killing Sewell, Zen once again held up his long sword. Splash! The sword radiance, which had gathered the power of 19 abilities of the space-time quadrant, flashed and went straight for the floating ball. While the sword radiance wasn't particularly fast, the ball made no attempt to dodge it. Crack! This time, the sword radiance, which contained the power of space, did not penetrate through the ball, but made a cut on its surface. Crack! Hairline cracks appeared on the surface of the ball, slowly climbing along its sides. The ball was sturdier than Zen had imagined, so without any hesitation, he slashed out more sword radiance at it. Meanwhile, from within the ball, a fierce dispute was taking place within the Snake Spirit King's coordinates. You asked me to release that guy, but now, he's about to finish me off. You have to give me more strength. Otherwise, we will die together. At death's door, the Snake Spirit King was extremely desperate. By now, they could hear the sound of the ball breaking. The Snake Spirit King grew even more nervous and started shouting, "That guy is attacking the ball." However, the black light remained silent. It had been giving orders to the Snake Spirit King behind the scenes this whole time. However, after Zen took out that sword, the black light had felt that the Snake Spirit King was of no more use to it. It could easily take over the other shore in the primitive land built by the Snake Spirit King. After all, Cornelius had only gotten thus far thanks to it. Thus, it had decided that it was a good choice to let the Snake Spirit King die in Zen's hands. However, while the Snake Spirit King was begging, the black light changed its mind. Don't worry. Of course I won't watch you die. Then what should I do? The Snake Spirit King heaved a sigh of relief, satisfied that the black light finally responded. Show your full strength, the black light said calmly. But my strength is not enough to face him, the Snake Spirit King said in confusion. It's enough now, the black light responded cryptically. Buzz. The Snake Spirit King's coordinates were originally pure golden, but after the black light finished speaking, pure black light beams crawled around the coordinates like deathly earthworms. Chapter 3796, Fast Speed. Of all the features and theurgies of the space guiding stone, the space ball was the most astonishing one. Since he hadn't even thought of analyzing the structure of the space ball, Zen was attacking the sphere blindly with the heavy sword. He also unleashed powerful sword radiance with every attack. However, that only caused a little bit of damage to the space ball. However, Zen didn't get frustrated. Although the process was slow, he could see his progress. The first time he brandished his sword, a crack appeared on the space ball. When he launched his second attack, the crack expanded and reached a bit further. By his third hit, the entire sphere was looking like a spider's web of cracks. Zen wasn't going to give up now. He waved his sword for the fifth time, and the space ball broke into several tiny pieces. It had taken him just 5 blows to destroy the space ball. The second he succeeded in doing that, the golden coordinates turned black. When he noticed that the Snake Spirit King's coordinates had changed color, Zen waved his sword at them once again. Let's end this, he smiled. Without the protection of the space ball, I am sure that these coordinates will vanish after I hit them, he thought to himself. Is it over? Is the damned Snake Spirit King finally going to die? What's going on with his coordinates? Why did they become pitch black? Is something going to happen? The human spirits, the monkey masters, and the bird masters were all excited and nervous simultaneously as they stared at the sword radiance and the fight that seemed to be tipping in Zen's favor. Just as the sword radiance had reached the coordinates, a black blade suddenly popped out from them. The blade collided with the sword radiance and a loud metallic sound was heard. To everyone's immense surprise, the black blade immediately destroyed the sword radiance. Then a black snake slowly emerged from the coordinates. This was none other than the Snake Spirit King himself. The Snake Spirit King had become much smaller than before now, although he was slightly bigger than Sewell. Regardless of his size, his appearance had changed a lot. The snake's body had also turned pure black, just like the coordinates. Also, he was not just a snake now. He had grown a pair of locust's legs as sharp as a knife and a halberd-shaped spike was on his tail. My king, our king is still alive. Oh yeah. The snake masters and the snake spirits had lost all hope upon seeing the space ball destroyed. They had been devoured by sorrow and despair at the thought that the Snake Spirit King could not come back to life now. What was more, Zen had taken out Su'ul with a single strike. They were aware of what would happen to them if things didn't go their king's way. It was beyond their dreams that not only would the king be alive, but also come out to defend against Zen's moves. Naturally, they were thrilled. Hang on, what is that? The Snake Spirit King has changed his form. He looks more powerful than before. The people on the altar were surprised to see the improvements in the king's body. The now small-looking Snake Spirit King came down like a leaf and stood in front of Zen. Hiss! The Snake Spirit King brought out his forked tongue. His golden, slated eyes were filled with a strong will of hatred. At the same time, there was also a hint of pleasure in his eyes. It looks like I should thank you for giving me such powers, the Snake Spirit King hissed. He could feel that he was much stronger than he had ever been before, even if his size did not betray it. There were no words which could describe the amount of his newly acquired strength. He had obtained a power that was much stronger than any creature of the main world had ever imagined of. His power was now of such magnitude that finding it was only possible in the deep space. However, he was displeased with the black light. Since the black light possesses such strength, why didn't I get it earlier? He thought to himself. This power is not yours, Zen said, as if he had read his mind. With his extraordinary abilities to perceive his opponent, he easily saw that the Snake Spirit King was several times stronger than before now. He had a feeling that his opponent could easily pose a threat to him in this condition. Suddenly, the heavy sword in Zen's hand shook slightly. But it was not his reaction of fear. Neither was it the sword's reaction of fear. The weapon was excited. As an entity from the 5th grade world, it had once confronted and even lost to the power that the Snake Spirit King had newly acquired. And it had also managed to defeat that power and destroy it once before. And although it had won, the deep space had lost. Therefore, it was no wonder that the sword was thrilled to meet this power again. Doesn't matter whether it belongs to me or not. What matters is that you will. As the Snake Spirit King spoke, he morphed into a huge black shadow and approached Zen. Die at my hands, he continued. Swoosh, swoosh, the Snake Spirit King attacked Zen with his legs. How is that even possible? Zen's eyes widened in shock. I can't believe this. The Snake Spirit King is fast enough for me to be unable to see his movements at all. How is that possible? I pride myself on being able to withstand and foresee attacks no matter how fast my opponent is. But the Snake Spirit King's speed is beyond my imagination. It's almost impossible for me to dodge his attack, Zen thought to himself. He himself could not have stopped the attack, but at that very moment, the irregular heavy sword in his hand began to move on its own. It gently came up to resist the Snake Spirit King's attacks as if it had a mind of its own. Zen wasn't doing anything, but his hand was waving the heavy sword. This was not something he could control. Whoever saw them was shocked by what was happening, including Zen himself. His right hand, which was holding the irregular sword, was nowhere to be seen, and so was the Snake Spirit King. All anyone could see was two unnoticeable shadows intertwined and hitting each other non-stop. Meanwhile, metallic sounds reached their ears. In the blink of an eye, the heavy sword had gone countless rounds with the Snake Spirit King. They are so fast, Fuxi remarked in surprise. The snake goddess was staring at Zen with a trace of worry in her eyes. Something is wrong. It looks like Zen is at a loss and his hand is out of his control. Yes, he is, the primeval Lord of Heaven responded. Master Corbett, do you have any idea what's going on with them? Have you ever seen the Snake Spirit King in such a form? The snake goddess asked in a respectful tone. Corbett looked at the scene and surveyed it with a frown. I've met someone with the power that the Snake Spirit King is using. I was in deep space at that time, he replied. The leaders of the Four Spirits sect had been rather keen on exploring the deep space in the past. They had gone far and wide. After all, the ancestry-level bloodline and the holy pillars of the Four Spirits sect themselves had originated from the deep space. It was known to everyone that there were many amazing things out there. As Kincaid's personal servant, Corbett had been lucky enough to enter the deep space once. Although the place I went to with my master is only the outermost part of the deep space, it was still full of dangers. We ran into a black locust there. It had a pair of legs as sharp as knives. The aura it emitted was quite similar to the one the Snake Spirit King is emitting right now, Corbett told them. Which means the new power that he has acquired is most likely from the deep space. The primeval Lord of Heaven remarked with a vacant expression. Hang on, that also means the power of the Snake Spirit King is now much better than that of any creature in the entire main world. Corbett nodded his head. Most likely, he confirmed. The snake goddess, Fuxi and the others gasped in astonishment. They had clearly heard the conversation between Zen and the Snake Spirit King just now. The Snake Spirit King has got some new power from someone that is not of this world. Who gave it to him? When did it happen? Was it really some powerful being from the deep space? A million questions ran through their minds. They had initially thought that the battle would come to an end as soon as the Snake Spirit King died. But that assumption had turned out to be wrong. Now, things were looking to be more complicated than they had imagined. Clung, clung, clung. On the other side, crisp sounds would continuously ring out around Zen and the Snake Spirit King. Under the control of the irregular heavy sword, Zen was brandishing it and resisting the attacks of the Snake Spirit King involuntarily. Suddenly, the Snake Spirit King made a sly move, and Zen staggered, almost falling down due to the heavy sword. However, he knew what he had to do. No matter what, he held on to the sword tightly and didn't drop it. Although the sword was incredibly strong, it needed the ancestry-level bloodline to provide it with the energy it needed to continue fighting. Once he dropped the sword, it would immediately run out of energy within 10 seconds. Maybe even less since it was facing the Snake Spirit King's attacks. And then, Zen would be ripped into bits by the Snake Spirit King. Chapter 3797, Probability Extreme Form. Zen wore a grim expression, failing to see the attacks from both sides clearly. Although the irregular heavy sword was able to protect him, Zen knew it would take a toll on it if it suffered attacks all the time. How are you able to make the sword block each strike? Zen asked the ancestry-level bloodline, clenching the irregular heavy sword tightly. The way the Snake Spirit King's body moves is unique, I can't understand it. I can't seem to predict his next move. There were two types of movement in the chaos. The first was to use explosive speed, and the other was to use spatial transference. Any bodily movement skill or any space theurgy fell under these two kinds of movement, but it was possible for each one to differ, since anyone could use them differently. However, the way the Snake Spirit King moved didn't seem to belong to either of the two types of movement. Gritting his teeth, Zen attempted to use his spiritual sense to see if he could capture the Snake Spirit King's trajectory. Just moments earlier, Zen thought that the Snake Spirit King was going to attack him head-on, but a split second later, he suddenly appeared behind Zen. Just when he felt the black blades slashing at his face, the next moment, they appeared above his head. The Snake Spirit King seemed to exist in a special space outside Zen's comprehension, since all the attacks came at him at random. There was just no possible way for him to predict the Snake Spirit King's next move. But your sword can, the ancestry-level bloodline replied, reading his mind. My sword. Zen examined the irregular heavy sword closely. He could vividly feel the sword's strong fighting intent. In fact, the sword's emotions were so strong that even Zen felt like he was full of fighting intent. The sword seemed to have fallen into a state of madness as it desperately chased after the Snake Spirit King. Just as Zen was hesitating, Corbett, who was standing at the top of the altar, suddenly took a few steps forward. Master Corbett, what are you doing? The snake goddess cried. I have to remind him, Corbett replied, his eyes trained on Zen in the distance. Master Kincaid once said that the strength of this sword always matches that of its master. What do you mean? The primeval Lord of Heaven asked, his curiosity piqued. The stronger the warrior who holds the sword is, the greater the power of the sword, Corbett spoke, almost as though in a daze. Master Kincaid was filled with regret many times, since he felt he was unable to bring out the sword's full potential. Master Kincaid didn't know how to use the sword. Why couldn't he use its full strength? The snake goddess asked dubiously. No, Master Kincaid knew this sword very well, Corbett replied. He said that he and this sword had become one, but he always thought the sword deserved someone better. The snake goddess's eyes flashed excitedly. Are you saying that even Master Kincaid didn't deserve this sword, even on his level of strength? What about the power of the ancestry-level bloodline? Corbett smiled. Master Kincaid has tried, but he couldn't control the ancestry-level bloodline. But Zen can, the snake goddess said excitedly. Yes, Corbett nodded, but he doesn't completely control the sword. Zen could only communicate with and passively provide energy for the irregular heavy sword. However, the irregular heavy sword acted on its own, and Zen had no control over it. So this whole time, Zen was being helplessly dragged by the sword all throughout the battle. It was almost as though he were a burden to the sword. Then, what should we do now? The snake goddess frowned. I need to remind him. As he spoke, Corbett took a few more steps forward. Standing at the edge of the stairs at the top of the altar, he shouted, Zen, although Master Kincaid's sword has acknowledged you, you haven't really controlled it yet. At this moment, Zen had been deep in thought, trying to think of solutions. When he heard what Corbett said, his brows shot up in astonishment. I haven't really controlled this sword. I'm already connected to it, what more do I need to do to be able to control it? Just as Corbett was about to answer him, the voice of the Snake Spirit King suddenly boomed. Shut up. Then, the black blades flew towards Corbett. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The Snake Spirit King wielded the black blades to cut 100 times. In the blink of an eye, Corbett was sliced into countless, tiny white pieces. Corbett was tens of thousands of feet away from Zen, yet the Snake Spirit King managed to cut him up and return back to Zen in a flash. How fast he moved was absolutely terrifying. Even the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, and the others standing behind couldn't help but take a few cautious steps backward. Only Gong Gong stood still, his hands clasped behind his back. He was keenly aware that they were in no condition to face the Snake Spirit King, and that trying to escape was futile. Thus, he decided to just stay calm. After all, Corbett was a treacherous being. It didn't take long before the countless, thin white pieces gathered together and merged to form Corbett's figure. Continuing where he left off, he started to shout again. It's not what you think it is. Zen, you can treat the irregular heavy sword as a cultivation method in an ancient book. You have to truly understand it. An ancient book, understand it. Zen echoed under his breath. His heartbeat quickened as he held the sword tightly. Perhaps he had underestimated the sword, maybe that was why the Snake Spirit King was so eager to obtain it. Since he had faith that the irregular heavy sword would protect him, he fused his spiritual sense into the sword. Swoosh. Once there, he saw a red ball of light. 140 light dots surrounded the ball of light, and from these light dots extended countless, densely packed thin lines. Zen observed it for a while. He soon discovered that whenever the ancestry-level bloodline injected energy into the irregular heavy sword, the energy surged to the light dots following along the different thin lines. Some of the light spots became incomparably bright after they obtained energy, while others became dim. 140 dots of light. 140. As Zen pondered over this number, turning it over in his mind, his eyes suddenly lit up as it finally dawned on him. 140. The number of the types of energy in the deep space. The ancestry-level bloodline once told Zen that there were 86 types of energy in the 6th grade world, while there were 140 types in the 5th grade world, otherwise known as the stellar world. The irregular heavy sword came from the deep space, which was the stellar world that the ancestry-level bloodline referred to. All this time, the sword converted the energy of the 4th grade world into the energy of the 5th grade world. Since the irregular heavy sword can use the energy of the 5th grade world, then that should mean I can use it, too. Zen thought excitedly. Ever since he obtained the sword, he had only been able to feel its emotions. Although the irregular heavy sword acknowledged Zen, it still was fiercely loyal to Kincaid, believing he was its true master. Even Zen thought the same. After all, it was a sword borrowed from the human Spirit King. He knew it would be returned to him in the end. But now, Zen realized that if he wanted to defeat the Snake Spirit King and the power behind him, he needed to gain control over this sword. Just as Corbett had said, he needed to treat this sword as a cultivation method in an ancient book to understand it. Buzz. Zen willed his spiritual sense to reach into the red light ball in the center. When it came into contact with the red light ball, Zen could feel it resisting him. The irregular heavy sword was still unwilling to accept him. I know you miss your former master. But only I can exert your power to the extreme, Zen gently coaxed. You should know what kind of power I have. If we want to bring Master Kincaid back to life, we have only one choice, we need to defeat the opponent in front of us. Accept me, Zen urged the sword through his spiritual sense. Gradually, he felt the resistance becoming weaker and weaker. Finally, Zen was able to integrate his spiritual sense with the red ball of light successfully. Boom. At this moment, Zen felt as if his mind had been smashed by a heavy hammer. A massive amount of information streamed in, information about the countless permutations of the 140 light dots. At the same time, it also informed Zen about the energy used by the Snake Spirit King and the irregular heavy sword, and he even figured out its strange name. Probability extreme form. Whoosh. Then, traces of black energy streamed into Zen's body from the irregular heavy sword. Chapter 3798, Wandering in the Cloud. Zen's current state had the Snake Spirit King confused as well. His opponent had shifted from Zen to this sword, and as the sword dragged Zen to fight him, Zen clearly had become a burden to the sword. This was good news for him as it meant that Zen was totally unable to fight back. Even so, this irregular heavy sword was so sharp and fast that it was capable of keeping up with him and breaking his fierce attacks. After all this time, he still could not defeat it. The Snake Spirit King was now growing impatient. Seeing Zen's body turn black brought a grim expression to his face. If a single sword was so difficult to deal with, how much more troublesome would Zen and the sword together be? With this in mind, he launched another onslaught of fierce attacks. Over 10,000 strikes were launched from his two black blades in a matter of only a few seconds. To everyone else, the Snake Spirit King did not exist, nor were the black blades or the irregular heavy sword visible. Even Zen's hand clutching the sword could only be seen very faintly. The clanging of the black blades and the heavy sword rang over 10,000 times, louder and harsher than before. It sounded as if someone was grinding a sword on marble. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Fortunately, the warriors present were all at the eternal realm or above. If they had been any weaker, hearing such sounds would have probably driven them insane. The irregular heavy sword finally buckled under the immense pressure of the attacks and could no longer hold off all the Snake Spirit King's strikes. Swoosh! It failed to block one of the 10,000 slashes that came at Zen, and a black blade slammed ruthlessly into his heavy black armor. Crack! A thin crack surfaced across the armor over Zen's waist. It extended through the inner layer, allowing the blade to cut all the way through to his back. Zen was hit. That sword, can it not withstand the attacks anymore? Zen seems to have fallen into some sort of trance and can't wake up. Waking up would be useless. He couldn't avoid the blade anyway. Those on the altar discussed their thoughts with one another, with the human spirits of the Black House, the Joy House and the Broad House the most nervous among them. They had not expected a human to be the one to decide the final result. As human spirits, they did all they could, which was only to watch from the sideline. Suddenly, the Snake Spirit King slashed out 10,000 more strikes with the blades. Maintaining constant caution and defending non-stop was impossible and more like a death sentence than anything else. Inevitably, the irregular heavy sword missed 2 of the 10,000 strikes. Crack, crack. This time, Zen's right shoulder was struck and hurt. The wound was 1.5 feet long, almost splitting Zen's body in two. Any other Eternal Realm warrior would have been sliced by such a strike. Fortunately, the ancestry-level bloodline had strengthened Zen's body greatly, and so he felt close to no pain. Buzz! The ancestry-level bloodline began moving. Green energy gushed out of the wound, madly repairing it as fast as it could. Such a great amount of life energy contained powerful repairing ability, enough to almost bring a dead person back to life. However, Zen's body was so strong and sturdy that it would take a lot more than usual. This made his recovery speed much slower. 3 seconds later, the Snake Spirit King launched another 10,000 strikes. The heavy irregular sword was able to resist 9,998 of them, letting 2 through. Crack, crack, they struck Zen square in the chest, breaking through the black armor, slicing his ribs and piercing into his heart. The next round of the assault unleashed 10,000 strikes once more. The hearts of everyone on the altar skipped a beat. What should we do? What should we do? That sword can't hold off the Snake Spirit King's attacks. Zen's going to be dismembered. If he keeps taking hits like this, he will surely die. Shall we help? Suggested Hamilton. Alphonse smiled bitterly and shook his head. How could we help him? They couldn't even see the Snake Spirit King. He was so fast, that to them Zen was fighting an invisible foe. Who among them was capable of attacking an invisible opponent? Manuel, Tirog and other monkey masters had already rushed down while Hamilton was still stuck in thought. But before they could even step out of the altar, they were hit by hundreds of strikes. They were all cut into inch-thin pieces that floated in the wind. It was a spectacular scene to behold. The method and skill that were used to execute the attack were beyond their comprehension. The Snake Spirit King still had most of his attention focused on Zen when he had sliced the monkey masters. He had been distracted for a moment and could not break through the defense of the irregular heavy sword. Another 10,000 strikes then slashed out. Zen's black armor was ripped to shreds and more horrific and fatal wounds appeared on his body. Black energy covered his entire body as he was being stabbed over and over again. Go to hell! The Snake Spirit King's black blades sped up again. This time, however, he pushed his power to the limit, making his 10,000 strikes even trickier to handle. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Amongst the high-pitched clattering of metal, the irregular heavy sword missed over 100 strikes this time. If they were to connect with Zen's body, it'd be enough to slice him to pieces. But before this could happen, Zen opened his eyes and noticed a cloud. A trace of confusion ran through his eyes. It was a large black cloud. with the radius of about 20 miles, covering the altar and an area in front of it. Zen gained instant enlightenment when he looked at this cloud. He could appear anywhere within the range it covered. Whether it be the edge of the black cloud or the center of it, he could appear in multiple places at the same time. It was a truly wondrous feeling. There did not seem to be any concept of space and time within the cloud, or at the least, space and time behaved quite special. Although he could be in many places at once, it was not duplicates of himself, it was all him. He was capable of appearing and disappearing in several places all at once. Zen then saw quite clearly the 10 positions of the Snake Spirit King, and the over 100 strikes coming from these spots were missed by the irregular heavy sword. They approached at deceptive angles which made them difficult to escape and made every blow fatal. Once Zen understood the probability extreme form, he could move through the cloud as the Snake Spirit King could. Because of this, he suddenly vanished from everyone's view. His figure flashed backward continuously. There was only one of him, but he appeared more than 10 times in different directions. With every dash and dodge, the Snake Spirit King's strikes were inches from connecting with him. Zen managed to dodge all the Black Blade's strikes effortlessly. He then put some distance between himself and the Snake Spirit King. For the first time, they both stopped and their figures were clear for everyone to see. Zen's body might have been covered in wounds and the ancestry-level bloodline was still working double time to repair it, but he still wore a smile on his face. "Did you make this cloud? It's really something. I seem to be able to wander within it freely." The Snake Spirit King's face darkened. The probability extreme form had given him a huge advantage, but in such a short period of time, Zen had mastered it. He had never in his wildest dreams expected that. Chapter 3799, The Disappearance of the Bold Conjecture House. Without uttering a single word, the Snake Spirit King wandered in the black cloud. Afterward, he launched another attack on Zen. At this point, Zen was already seriously injured. His body was covered in cuts. The Snake Spirit King's plan was to finish Zen before he could fully recover. As soon as the Snake Spirit King activated the probability extreme form, 1,000 creatures that looked exactly like him appeared in front of Zen. Then, they all came together and charged towards Zen. Whoosh, 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 1,000 identical versions of the Snake Spirit King brandished their black blades at Zen. Just a few moments ago, Zen couldn't see the Snake Spirit King's movements. But now, he was able to see them clearly. There were nearly 2,000 black blades hacking down at Zen. But before the blows could land on him, he suddenly vanished into thin air. In the blink of an eye, Zen reappeared on the edge of the black cloud. This time, he was not alone. There were 999 duplicates of himself surrounding him. Adding the original, there were 1,000 identical Zens. They stood in a circle on the edge of the black cloud. So this is my limit. At most, I can only create 999 versions of myself, Zen muttered under his breath. It doesn't seem like I can break through, he whispered darkly. Yes, me neither, the other 999 duplicates replied in chorus. They sounded like bees buzzing in unison. Shut up, come and fight me, the Snake Spirit King roared furiously. He was already getting impatient. He and the copies of himself dispersed simultaneously. Each of them was going to deal with a Zen. Once again, the Snake Spirit King brandished and directed his black blades towards Zen. The former's copies did the same and went for Zen's copies. However, Zen had a different approach. Instead of fighting him head-on, Zen came up with a sensible plan. Just like earlier, he disappeared again. One would be unable to predict the other's movement while they were inside this black cloud. Even though the Snake Spirit King had mastered the probability extreme form, he still wouldn't be able to foresee Zen's next move. As a result, he and his copies didn't hit their targets. After a short while, Zen reappeared in the center of the black cloud together with his 999 copies. The two of them exchanged blows back and forth once more as they activated the probability extreme form at the same time. The people on the altar and the snake spirits below became even more confused. They couldn't see the Snake Spirit King a few seconds ago, but they could hear harsh metallic sounds echoing from the black cloud. This meant that the Snake Spirit King was still fighting Zen. But now, there were no signs of Zen and the Snake Spirit King fighting at all. They couldn't hear any sound. They soon realized that the fight between them was now beyond what they could ever imagine. Wait a minute, are they? Maybe they're fighting somewhere else. Maybe they're in a different dimension, surmised one of the people on the altar. I can't even sense their auras anymore. This is so weird. It looks like Zen has comprehended the same bodily movement skill as the Snake Spirit King. Don't worry, I think Zen will win, Corbett hypothesized. The tension in the atmosphere gradually dissipated after Zen and the Snake Spirit King disappeared. Just then, Alphonse and Hamilton climbed to the top of the altar and stood in front of Corbett. "Greetings, Elder Corbett," said Alphonse. "Nice to meet you again, Elder Corbett." Hamilton bowed respectfully as he said his greetings. Corbett was an old servant of Kincaid. Even so, he held a high status in the human spirit sect. He was even allowed to take charge of the human spirit sect on behalf of the human spirit king. The human spirits of the Joy House, the Broad House, and the Black House were all excited to see Corbett. However, they were trapped inside the space earlier. Therefore, they couldn't greet him. Corbett looked at the human spirits and sighed. "Are you the only ones left in this world?" "Aside from us, there are also 200 world builders," Alphonse answered promptly. The world builders were responsible for creating secondary worlds. However, they didn't have high ranks in the human spirit sect. Simply put, they were not core members of the sect. "Are there no other members of our sect left?" Corbett inquired once again. "Unfortunately, there are none," Alphonse replied. The human spirits of the Joy House, the Broad House, and the Black House stayed on the other shore for quite some time. Even though they worked for the Snake Spirit sect, they still searched for their kind in secret. They found that they were the only ones who survived in the world. "Alas, that is quite regrettable," Corbett sighed again. He felt sorry for his own kind. Alphonse remained silent and thought for a while. Afterward, he asked, "Do you want to search for the elders of the Bold Conjecture House?" "Yes, I do," Corbett responded without any hesitation. Within the human spirit sect, the Bold Conjecture House relished the same reputation as the 10 Directions House. As a matter of fact, it played a more important role in the human spirit sect than the 10 Directions House. Every member of the 10 Directions House was the greatest among the entire human spirit sect. For instance, the leader of the 10 Directions House was originally only slightly weaker than Kincaid. On the other hand, it was thanks to the Bold Conjecture House that the members of the 10 Directions House became such powerful. The strongest human spirits in terms of brute strength would join the 10 Directions House. However, the powerful and resourceful human spirits would definitely choose to join the Bold Conjecture House. When Kincaid was trapped, Corbett placed his hopes upon the Bold Conjecture House. He thought that the members of this house might be able to come up with some plan to free Kincaid. However, what happened was beyond his expectations. The young man who came to save Kincaid was not from the Bold Conjecture House or the 10 Directions House at all. In fact, he was not even a human spirit, but a human being. Corbett was absolutely astonished by this turn of event. "It is unfortunate, but we surmise that all the members of the Bold Conjecture House had all been killed," Alphonse informed. "We have been looking for them so many years. We haven't heard anything from them yet. If they were not truly gone, we should have found them already," Alphonse thought to himself. But now, there's finally hope. This human named Zen is fighting with the Snake Spirit King. If Master Kincaid knew about it, he would be glad, Corbett said with a smile. Although Zen hadn't defeated the Snake Spirit King yet, he had already saved the human spirit sect. "I really hope he wins against the Snake Spirit King," added Alphonse. This battle was far too important for them. Their fate rested upon Zen's shoulders. After the Snake Spirit King and Zen disappeared for 2 minutes, they suddenly heard a loud sound echoing throughout the entire area. "Are they battling again?" Hamilton asked while releasing his spiritual sense. Every one of the people on the altar shivered. They looked around and unleashed their spiritual sense. Soon enough, they saw 2 figures on the open field in front of the altar. The Snake Spirit King slashed at Zen with his 2 black blades. Meanwhile, Zen raised his heavy sword above his head to block the attack. "You have been the one delivering attacks for quite some time now. It's time for me to strike back," Zen said tauntingly. The ancestry-level bloodline had completely healed his wounds. Therefore, he thought it was his chance to fight back. He only uttered a few words before silence fell once more. He and the Snake Spirit King disappeared again. Out of the blue, the sound of metal colliding echoed once more. "Zen has fully recovered. That's good news. So now he's starting to retaliate." He had sustained severe injuries earlier. Yet, he still managed to avoid all of the Snake Spirit King's attacks until now. Zen is incredible. Everyone watching the fight from the altar were quite clever. There were no details that could escape them. The 2 of them were battling within the black cloud once again. Zen and the Snake Spirit King kept delivering attacks, blocking them, or avoiding them. They never stopped moving. Nonetheless, their spectators were unable to follow their actions. The group of Zen's duplicates closed in on the group of the Snake Spirit King's copies. Each of Zen's copies attacked its target with moves that differed from the others. Meanwhile, each of the Snake Spirit King's copies blocked the attacks and retaliated. It was like watching a well-choreographed dance. The two of them had fought 10,000 rounds in just about 2 seconds. So, now you have comprehended the probability extreme form as well. But what does it matter? At most, this fight will merely result in a draw. Just face it, you can't even hurt me at all. The Snake Spirit King finally spoke. Zen remained calm and smiled. Is the probability extreme form all that mysterious person behind you taught you? What are you getting at? The Snake Spirit King stared at Zen and frowned. He didn't know why Zen would say that, but he suddenly had a bad feeling about it. Truly, the Thurgies from the 5th grade world are powerful and remarkable. Such a pity. The only thing you mastered is the probability extreme form, Zen replied as he gripped his sharp sword tightly. Once again, energy flowed out of the cracks on his sword. Chapter 3800, The Backstage Manipulator. Faint green flames were now dancing on the edges of the irregular heavy sword. They were faint, but highly viscous, like a thick liquid, slowly climbing around the sword, and then onto Zen's arms. Finally, they formed a green head. The head looked horrendous, as if a ghost had crawled out of the depths of hell. It had huge horns and breathed fire. Splash! As the head opened its mouth, green flames whooshed out instead of breath, and ignited the irregular heavy sword. Zen was looking at the Snake Spirit King through the green flames. He suddenly remarked, "It is theoretically impossible to get around the probability extreme form. I can only see one way of ending this fight. And that is no way. This fight will remain a stalemate, because we can't kill an opponent with infinite speed. At the same time, maintaining the probability extreme form requires extreme amounts of energy. I can exhaust you little by little as the fight progresses, but I have a better choice." As soon as Zen finished speaking, he disappeared. And then he reappeared immediately. Using the infinite speed, space and distance were meaningless to him. Even though there was quite a bit of distance between him and the Snake Spirit King, it could be said that they were overlapping. Splash! The irregular heavy sword slashed down on the Snake Spirit King's head. However, the Snake Spirit King also disappeared rapidly. Zen's attack did not succeed. Both sides possessed almost equal speed. Although I don't know what use those flames have, no matter how powerful they are, they can't burn me. You. The Snake Spirit King couldn't finish his words. He was shocked at what he was seeing. A giant hole, several hundred feet in diameter, had appeared in the black cloud. The green flames had actually burned through a portion of the black cloud. At that moment, Zen reappeared, turned around, and looked at the Snake Spirit King with a faint smile on his face. Although the probability extreme form is powerful, there is still a way to restrain it. And that is to utilize the flame extreme form. The irregular heavy sword was not exactly a living being. Basically, it could only communicate through emotions, and what it felt or made you feel was beyond words. However, Zen had obtained the ability to understand what it was trying to say. Splash! Zen began to wave his irregular heavy sword in the black cloud. The green flames were beginning to spread everywhere now. The black cloud was hanging over them like a huge curtain. But the flames seemed to know what they were doing. In a few seconds, a large area of the cloud was burned out. Zen was moving incredibly fast. He could summon 999 avatars and whip thousands of sword strikes in a flash. Together, the flames were devouring the cloud like a hungry lion. The hole was now hundreds of thousands of feet long and wide. Stop! The Snake Spirit King roared hysterically. In desperation, he pounced on Zen once again, trying to stop the man from burning down the black cloud. However, in terms of speed, Zen was easily on par with the Snake Spirit King. As long as he maintained the probability extreme form and kept dodging, the Snake Spirit King would be unable to do anything to him. Splash! 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 With flames flowing all around it, the irregular heavy sword in Zen's hand turned into a burning stick. The flames were now rising up like a dragon. A giant hole began to spread out from the center of the black cloud and was expanding surprisingly fast. About 5 minutes later, it had already spread across 2/3 of the area of the black cloud. 2 more minutes and the black cloud, which had been 400 square miles in area, had disappeared almost completely. Only a few fragments of it remained. Even though the fragments were not connected to each other, the Snake Spirit King still had the ability to crawl within them. However, the Snake Spirit King was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. The worst part was that there was no point in being anxious. Pretty soon, only a small fragment about 10 feet long was left, and the Snake Spirit King was trapped on it. By that time, Zen had already left the black cloud, and the people on the altar could see him. Why has only Zen appeared? Quote, where is the Snake Spirit King? What does he want to do? Wait, can you see those flames on the sword? They are so strange. They flow like liquid and it's almost as if they're sentient. The audience watched Zen float in one direction and wave the irregular heavy sword around him. Splash! Another whip of the sword and the green flames burned the last fragment of the black cloud where the Snake Spirit King was hiding. He was forced to stumble out. Hiss! The Snake Spirit King spat out his tongue. He looked furious at being humiliated like that. The two black blades on him suddenly morphed into a string of black flowers and chopped at Zen's head. However, without the black cloud, the probability extreme form had become useless, and the Snake Spirit King's speed had returned back to normal. Bang, 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 Zen blocked his attack as if he were confronting a child. And not only that, every time Zen blocked the blades, green flames would spread from his sword to the blades and engulf them. The Snake Spirit King was too focused on his attacks. Therefore, when he finished, unaware to him, the green flames had already spread all over his body. The interesting thing was that the flames released by the flame extreme form did not cause any burning physical pain, or at least the Snake Spirit King could not feel it. Therefore, he did not realize that he was wrapped in those flames until after he had stepped back and taken a look at himself. And then he saw that Zen was standing far away from him with a faint smile on his face. Damn you! Just as the Snake Spirit King was about to rush forward again, the green flames suddenly exploded like fireworks. They burned every single part of his body. The flames did not have any heat, but they still possessed an astonishing amount of destructive power. The Snake Spirit King's body was being burned bit by bit. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was as if his body had been laced with kerosene. As the flames continued to burn and spread, he began to collapse and shrink. In less than half a minute, he had been burned to a crisp, black death. Up until now, only two ways of killing treacherous beings were known on the other shore. The first one was to be killed by the light of annihilation, and the second was to be completely eroded by the void dust. The Snake Spirit King, however, had faced his demise in a way that had never been witnessed before by anyone in any part of the world. The Snake Spirit King has been defeated once again. Not just defeated, he was burned to death. How is that possible? How can Zen's flames burn him down like that? At that moment, every single treacherous being present there, including the Snake Masters, the Snake Spirits, the Bird Masters, and the Monkey Masters felt a chill run down their spines. Was it really as easy to kill them now? After all, they were all supposed to be immortal. However, if one more way of killing them had just been discovered, it meant crisis. Is it over? Someone piped up. No, not yet. The Snake Spirit King's coordinates are still there. Came the answer. Everyone's eyes turned towards the sky once again. The black coordinates of the Snake Spirit King were still fixed there. Zen's figure flashed and he whooshed into the sky, holding the irregular heavy sword and slashing at the black coordinates without hesitation. Luckily, this wasn't supposed to be hard. Without the protection of the ball, the black coordinates couldn't resist Zen's attack. However, just as the man brandished his sword, a ball of black light suddenly emerged from the coordinates. It spread out like a black hole, and at the same time, a black fist stretched out from it, slamming into the irregular heavy sword with a furious metallic clang. Boom! Zen felt an irresistible force coming from the irregular heavy sword, and then he was sent flying backwards at an incredible speed. He had been thrown backwards so forcefully that he couldn't even guess how fast he was flying. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Recovering, Zen began using spatial transference. He traveled around back and forth within a distance of 200 feet, trying to lose the attacker. He didn't stop until he had moved at least 100 times. He was not surprised at the sudden appearance of the fist, though. He looked at the black hole calmly and then said, "You gave the Snake Spirit King his power. Are you the evil backstage manipulator that ruined the Four Spirits sect?"